Good morning. We'll go ahead and call Marshall County Fiscal Court to order May 16th, 2017. Under guests, we have Angela Boyd with CASA. You want to come up, Angela, and give us a brief description of CASA? Angela and I, a couple of weeks ago, I gave her a tour of the courthouse, and they are in some need of some office space here in Marshall County. We've got some offices that we've got available for them, and I wanted to present that to the court. There's 2 offices upstairs that I think that they could utilize, be an asset here in Marshall County for their efforts. Obviously, we need to discuss rent. That was one of the things that we had discussed, and possibly renting out that office space from the county. I know some of the other agencies do that. I threw out $150 a month, but we can discuss that in detail. But for right now, if you can just give us a brief overview of what CASA does for the county.
Okay, thank you for having me. Really fast, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate, but basically in a more generalized term, we help children who are taken from their homes due to abuse and neglect. And so we actually go to wherever they are residing, and we form a relationship with them. We talk to anyone involved in their lives, their parents, counselors, teachers, and we just really try to get a feel of how they're doing and what they need. And the purpose is just to be with them, a stable presence throughout the entire process, so that they know that no matter what happens or where they go, that they have someone there that's for them, to be that voice for them so that they don't fall through the cracks. We do write reports to the court and give them our ideas, our recommendations, the things that we've found, kind of an extra set of eyes and ears to help with the social workers. Since they are so busy, we try to maybe fill that gap to help them and bridge to the court. I believe that it is, of course I'm biased, but I think it is a program that is needed, and I see wonderful results in a lot of the families that we do work with. We do help Callaway and Marshall. We don't actually have a physical office in Marshall, and so that's why I'm here to just hopefully get that started. By having this office, I'm hoping that we'll be able to have more volunteers come in from Marshall. We currently have 19 volunteers, but there's only 5 that are in Marshall, and I think that's just because we haven't been able to get the word out about who we are, even though we've been in Marshall for 10 years, I believe. So, you know, it's a big deal. We've served 27 children here this year. Again, I think that number could easily grow if we had an office here. We would be able to hopefully make part of that office a place where the children and the families can actually come. It'll also be a place that the DCBS workers can utilize with us, because they do not have a place in their office where the kids can come if they need to have home visits. So it wouldn't just be us using it, and I think this will help us to form better bonds in Marshall that we need in order to help our kids. The numbers are rising for the children that are being taken from their homes, especially because of meth running wild, which I'm sure all of you know about. But anyway, that's nutshell, and we would really appreciate any help that you guys could give us. That would be great.
Appreciate it. I know we've got other services that rent out office space here at the courthouse, and we do have some offices that are available upstairs. Jeff, that was one of the things I meant to talk to you about, and we didn't get the chance to talk to, as far as if we were to move forward on that, drafting up an agreement with them. I asked the commissioners if y'all have any questions.
You have an office in Callaway County?
We do. We have one over by the hospital. But again, I think it is important to have one here. This is, you know, we want to be here as much for Marshall County as we do for Callaway, so.
If we've got available space, I know that's a nominal fee. An organization that serves people in the county or the children in the county, I wonder if we had available space, why we couldn't just allow them to use that or agree to that at no charge. If we need to charge them some rent, I guess that's okay.
Well, it's like any other contribution you would make. If you determine that it's where the organization has, and most importantly, it has a public purpose, then you can earmark that to provide them space.
Certainly have a public purpose, or I've been to a meeting a few years ago. I don't doubt that they have a public purpose. The kids
Right.
and children are some of in need as much as anyone. To have an advocate, that's absolutely.
Well, I've dealt with them since their inception, and the organization is tremendous because we've got, an overwhelming amount of dependency, neglect, and abuse cases in this county. And it's most services that we have access to, that people have to travel, and including CASA at this point. But CASA, they do come and do things, but these folks a lot of them are very limited on being able to travel as well. And to have them here would certainly help this county in what we're trying to do.
We have vacant space too, don't we?
We do.
have an office right here, also vacant.
That's the ones that they were looking at. It's the appropriate size that they would need if families were to come in. So, if that's what I'm hearing, that we'll give support.
Does she have a grant application? Okay.
We'll just do that through that. Okay. Well, good.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for listening.
You have a good day. All right, we'll move on to Calvert City Mayor and Calvert City Attorney Greg Northcutt. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Calvert City appreciates very much the kindness of the court in allowing us at the last moment to be able to schedule the report. Our meeting last Thursday with property owners in the wellhead protection zone for Calvert City's water supply. We recognized 53 properties in that wellhead protection zone and sent all property owners a personal letter inviting them to attend the meeting. And from the response, we had 24 property owners who either attended the meeting, called me personally to ask questions, or I had a representative present for that meeting. And I'm glad to report to you that from the wellhead protected paradigm, all property owners, with the exception of one, and I'm having to guess from his demeanor and from his rhetoric, would oppose any kind of wellhead protection. All the rest of those property owners are in favor of wellhead protection, and we find that to be of great help to Calvert City. So we would request the court grant us the wellhead protection. And on the general zoning issue, by far the majority of those property owners, after our discussion, understood the value of zoning and what it could do in the protection of that corridor. But we're yet a little ahead of ourselves in getting that request before the court, because there are certain properties that have been earmarked as being the most strategic in that zoning paradigm. And so we're going to go back, revisit that, contact the property owners again, have another meeting, and then we'll come back to the court with the general zoning requirement. I do believe from our meeting, 90+% of those property owners also are in favor of or have no issue with the general zoning for that area. So we'll come back to you with that, but we certainly would like to request that you grant us the wellhead protection request so we can get those waterways protected from pollution in the future. Thank you much. Any questions?
Doesn't EPA demand that that be part of the deal? I mean, they're talking to Roger. My conversation with Roger, that is an EPA requirement. Isn't that correct, Greg?
It is, but EPA doesn't tell us how we have to do it.
Well,
It's a
I
requirement.
understand that.
Yeah, you're correct. It is a requirement we have to do it.
There's actually a suggested procedure on the website, though, that doesn't start with the wellhead protection order. It begins with education.
Yeah, it's a big plan. It's actually a wellhead protection program or wellhead protection plan, and this is just one element of it. And yet the EPA has required us to do this, but they don't require you to grant it. But if you don't, we're kind of stuck.
Greg, I got a question, because I know
Sir.
a lot of the property owners had reached out to me. On the 5-year plan that the city's been submitting to Department of Water,
Right.
do you outline your, the actual strategies?
Honestly, that's Roger's. Roger's not here. And the 5-year plan is Roger's, baby. You know, I have not been involved in that process, so I honestly don't know. But I know that Roger is the one that came to the planning commission asking that we impose wellhead protection over that aquifer.
Right.
But I don't know if it's actually, I don't know what he's done with it in terms of writing it in the plan.
Right. Now, what I'm learning about the wellhead protection is that, just like the gentleman was saying, is that there are other options. Education for the landowners is one of those options.
Well, it's more like an accumulation. There's a lot more than just wellhead zoning protection. The wellhead protection plan is multifaceted. There's a lot of it, and education is one of them.
Has that, y'all, I think y'all have been, the city's been submitting these 5-year plans since '97,
Probably.
Yeah, a long time.
long time. Are those education, I mean, because it talks about public meetings, it talks about educating the landowners that are in that wellhead protection area.
And I honestly don't know.
Okay, I mean, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
All we
We-
speak to is a meeting we had the other night, which was an educational meeting. All of
Okay.
it, so.
yeah. Roger really is the one that's reporting to EPA. He's the one that's leading us in meeting their requirements. So he puts the plan together, he makes the reports, so, and he's not here today. I apologize about that.
Judge Keeson, I can tell you as a property owner that I've never been contacted before this. So, about, we've owned property there since in that area since before 1997.
You haven't been contacted?
We've never received it. So,
So maybe not.
Okay. But my question is that there's other options. I know that there's been a lot of landowners that, when it comes to zoning or when it comes to regulations, obviously they have questions. But I think looking at this, if there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if there are landowners that are in that aquifer that may be contaminating it, obviously you want to contact them, find the source, educate maybe, if it's not being contaminated, and I don't think it is, the educational piece is huge
It is
because
huge, I would think.
I think out of those 53 or 54 landowners, about 28 are county residents or property owners. But if you educate them on what they can and can't do, or the do's and the don'ts, or the things that are common across the state as far as what contaminates an aquifer or the waterhead program, you might find that you get landowners that will follow.
I'm sure. You would think. Everybody, you would think everybody has an interest in seeing that aquifer's not poisoned.
Right. Do we know if any landowners are not following? You talk about a landowner with EPA. And is there?
There was a landowner that was conducting, well, and you guys are aware of it, that there were some vehicles being stored on a piece of property. To our knowledge, it's not actually contaminated the aquifer, but it certainly posed a risk to the aquifer, and EPA is dealing with that, the landowner in particular. From my perspective, the zoning element allows us to head it off before it becomes a problem.
Well, sure, and so does the educational. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That
That's right. The education and zoning would
Yes.
serve somewhat
Yes.
similar purposes in stopping it, rather than being reactive, preventing the problem from ever rising on.
sure, and we all know that when you got county residents and you start talking about zoning,
Right.
they got a lot of questions.
And frankly, that's why we divided it into two pieces, and that's why we're gonna take some time to talk to them. And as I explained to them, honestly, Calvert City doesn't have any interest in imposing. The planning commission is a volunteer board. They don't want to regulate any more than they have to.
Well, I'm okay. Now regulating
not with regard to wellhead protection, but with general zoning, you know, we were talking about general zoning, they have no interest in, the only reason we talk about the wellhead protection because it's an easily identified area. In 1969, I think, Calvert City had zoning, extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction for 5 miles around Calvert City. But when I came in about 89 or 90, I looked at that and said, look, if you guys are not going to exercise it, why don't we just take it out of the ordinance? Because if you're not going to use it, don't do it. And so they took it. They don't do that. They're not looking to just, they gain nothing by it. It's just more work for them. But in the wellhead protection and in that interchange question, they're interested. So, but there were some people, there was a bit, everybody didn't have the same attitude about zoning in that interchange, about general zoning in that interchange. So, in an effort just to get our zoning ordinance, the one we've been working on forever, to get it complete and in place, we thought, let's just go ahead and we'll just do the wellhead protection, and then we'll go back and talk to the landowners out there and see if they want the protection of zoning along that interchange. So that's sort of where we've come to. I understand it's the same issue. Yeah, when you start talking about zoning, it does cause people to have a lot of questions. And we answered a whole bunch of questions Thursday night. And everybody, it was a good meeting. Everybody was congenial, and most people saw the value. But we're probably not. We need to do some more talking before we impose any kind of general regulation. And just wellhead protection is enough at this point to at least keep from messing up the water. Is that the one you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, just that one's fine. That lets us set our public hearings and get our proposed zoning ordinance before the council so we can get it passed.
Was this given, when was this drafted? Was this drafted before the meeting or after the meeting?
Yeah, this was drafted
During the first meeting.
during the first meeting, yeah.
I mean, with the landowners, had the landowners seen
No.
did y'all present that to
No,
them?
they talked about it in principle.
Like,
And they just looked at it as the difference between just regulating wellhead protection and then general regulatory for purposes of controlling the kinds of businesses that might go in around the interchange.
Let me ask this.
Sure.
Could you still not accomplish the same goal with the wellhead protection through education?
No.
No,
Why not?
because that's requesting, and that would certainly be, that would be an enormous benefit, I would think. But you couldn't say, if somebody was gonna put in if somebody wanted to put a gas station in, and you didn't have the ability to say, you've gotta put curbs to contain petroleum spills and so forth, then if they didn't want to, they could do whatever they wanted to do. Now, they might have to deal with EPA after the fact if they're poisoning the water, but it might be too late at that point. So it serves a real critical, I mean, at least in my perspective, it serves a real critical function, because sometimes people don't care about the community as much as they do their pocketbook. And so it poisons them. Those people are grateful in Marshall County, few and far between, but it could happen. And this just gives an opportunity for folks who are in the know, for people who know what the regs are and what you don't need to be sticking in an aquifer, to say, no, you can't do that, or at least you have to contain it, or put some stopgaps in place to make sure you don't poison the water source. But education wouldn't give you that wouldn't give you that ability. It'd give you the ability to tell them you're poisoning you're threatening to poison the water source, but you couldn't tell them, you couldn't force them not to do it. That makes sense. I don't know.
I guess, is there anticipated gas stations that are coming in?
Well, probably. I mean, it's an interchange, it's an interstate interchange.
Our zoning regulates what type of business can go into that intersection.
Yes, sir.
So at this point, gas stations in the majority of that zone is not allowed.
But we had one closed. We've got a spot where a gas station was, and there's not a gas station there now, and it's on that corner, and one could go there.
Could you be specific on your, I understand the wellhead protection, but the zoning, or not the zoning, but the regulating what takes place in specific areas of that wellhead protection?
In the city,
Ask that question. Ask that.
I don't see a gas station on some of these properties that are out in the
right,
county.
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking about specific locations.
Right. A mechanic shop. If somebody gets going to put in a mechanic shop, and sometimes some mechanics do things correctly, and some mechanics operate on a shoestring. And if you were going to be operating on, well, just to go to the ridiculous, if you're going to be operating on a dirt floor, that wouldn't be a good thing on top of that aquifer if you're running a mechanic shop. You've done a few engines of petroleum on the ground, and now we've got big issues. We've got millions of dollars worth of rehab that we've got to go through. And so, and that's an area, that whole wellhead protection area is an area that's pretty open. It's not been developed. To this point, it's not been developed very much. But as traffic picks up along 66, 69, probably, we're expecting that those properties are all going to become more valuable and more likely for development. That's sort of that's where we are in the history of development. 66, 69 are coming in, traffic's picking up, vulnerability is, we're feeling more vulnerable all the time, so EPA and everybody else is saying you probably pay attention and do what you can do to keep from messing up the only aquifer the Calvert City's got at this point. The only clean aquifer that we're drawing all of our water out of.
I'd really like to see this strategy. I would think that those concerns would have been listed in the strategy plan moving
Do you have a
forward.
5-year plan?
I've got a copy of what the 5-year plan is, but it's not from Calvert.
But it's not a 5-year plan.
We tried to search the actual database, and couldn't pull it up. I mean, it talks about the management strategies, and I just wonder if when this became part of the management strategy, the regulation of the wellhead protection area.
The first time I knew anything about it was the last time we looked at see, every 5 years you got to review
Right.
your zoning ordinance.
I think 2015 was the last 5-year plan that was submitted.
Not water and sewer 5-year plan, but planning and zoning have to review their plans every 5 years. And the last time they reviewed it, which was about 8 years ago, was when wellhead protection zoning first came up. And we've been working on that ordinance for a long time, and we're just now to the point of figuring out, okay, how you gonna do it. Back when Kevin was the water and sewer guy in Calvert City, he was talking about it, but trying to figure out, well, how do you do it? What do you do? And so what they ultimately decided to do is a fairly simple kind of a regulation that just simply says, don't put the list of federal hazardous materials. You can't introduce this list of federal hazardous materials into the ground in the wellhead protection area. And if you want to develop something out there, you got to run it by water and sewer first, and tell them what it is that you're doing so they can double check and make sure you're not introducing some poisonous material into the ground that can make it into the aquifer. It's pretty simple. There's not much protocol. It's a pretty simple process, because this is just the first. And unless something changes, that seems like it ought to work to me. It's a simple human kind of a process rather than creating some big bureaucracy that has to be, hill that has to be climbed. It's an easy thing.
Has it worked?
But we haven't done it. We can't do it.
So it was a suggestion, but it wasn't.
Oh, right, we put it in the proposed ordinance, but we can't go forward with the ordinance without the consent of fiscal court. That's what the statute says, we can't do a wellhead protection extraterritorially without your consent. And so because our aquifer extends beyond the boundaries of the city, that's where we are.
Commissioners, you have any questions?
From what I've heard, I'm ready to grant their consent.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
As a property owner, why is, there's a whole, on the website, there's a list of things that they should do besides this, including the education. Why has none of this other stuff been done with the property owners? It's like you're putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit. I'm not against keeping the water supply protected, but why do this one thing and not do the other 4 things that are listed there?
Well,
That's not a good enough answer. Well, I don't know because Roger's not here.
yeah, I don't.
So-
I'm not part of that process. I would assume,
And
I
why
would assume
wasn't
that you're
this
right.
plan presented to us the other night at the meeting when the property owners were there?
Say that again?
Why wasn't this? Why didn't we receive information printed out where we could actually read it? That indicates either,
What information would you want printed out?
I don't know, what about what you have presented here on the screen?
Verbally, that's what we talked about.
Well, I understand verbally,
Okay, so
but
verbally,
verbal,
it's reading, isn't it?
verbal's not binding legally. Writing would be
But
binding.
Uh-huh.
that was an informational meeting. It wasn't a legal meeting to take a vote.
I can read, I can get information from writing all the time though.
This is actually fiscal courts. Jason prepared that for the fiscal court. And we're here, we don't know what the fiscal court's gonna pass, but we're just asking
And
that they let us do
As I
this.
said, I'm not against protecting our water supply, even though I'm on North Marshall Water. But I just don't understand. It doesn't seem like that all the steps have been taken to this point, so that could be taken.
Yeah,
Dale,
probably
do
is not.
you think the people at the meeting, and obviously they're your neighbors and stuff, do you think any of those people have a problem, not with, and I understand your concern and be educated on the general zoning authority, but what about the wellhead protection? Is everybody pretty comfortable with that?
I think everybody that was there, except for the one person who had been working with the EPA and she was very upset about it.
Right.
And it was mostly the harassment from the EPA,
Right.
where they were trying to get her in compliance. But
Right, and-
it was 24 of 53 property owners there, you know.
Yeah.
The biggest property owner of all of them, it would be Kelly Smith or Kelly Mitchell now, and she wasn't there. She lives in Nashville. I mean, I really think that they should, other than just asking somebody to come at one meeting, I think everybody should be present, or everybody should be.
But my question,
Represented.
are you comfortable, and like I say, I know you know the neighbors as well as
Sure.
I know the neighbors, and I've talked to many of the people out there, the property owners out there that have contacted me, and I've contacted some of them, but it was my impression, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm asking, not telling.
Sure.
I feel like that the people are comfortable, their concern was with the general, more with the general zoning authority
I think-
than it was with the wellhead protection.
I think for the
And
most part,
some of
that's
those people probably drink the water, don't they? Aren't they
No, most
customers?
that's North Marshall Water.
right.
Most of us don't
And some of them actually have wells that's in the
But
same.
they've got family members that live right across the city limits and so forth, and that was my understanding from my conversation with it. I didn't talk to 54 people out there, but double-digit people that either contacted me or I contacted them, just saw them out, but none of those people had a problem with the wellhead protection.
Right.
They did, there was a lot of questions about the general zoning authority, but very little, or actually none. Nobody had a problem with and when the county attorney's office drafted we got 2 copies. We got one with the general and one with the wellhead protection. And the discussion, from my understanding, Commissioner Gold, had no problem, as he said, and Commissioner Boland, and I don't think there was any problem from this body as far as the wellhead protection. And that's why I'm asking you.
I think for the most part, you're right, from the people that were there.
That's what
I would say there might have been 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think the gentleman with the beard who led.
Rob, and he was inebriated. He's,
Right.
he was belligerent.
I'm glad you said that instead of.
Right, so,
That
but,
was well documented.
right. I think for the most part, that's true, but I think as property owner, I would like to know everything there is to know about it. I would like to have that list of items that you're not supposed to put in place in the ground. I mean, to me, that's a really important thing. I mean, why not it's printing out a piece of paper and mailing it to people. It seems like a very minimal thing that could be done.
Well, the good thing that came out of the meeting, I thought, was the dialogue between those outside the city residents and the city of Calvary, hoping that they get the understanding that our goal here is not to be oppressive and dictatorial to them, but to be a partner and a friend, and to protect their properties at the highest level of protection that we can provide. And the wellhead protection would provide those wells that aren't on North Marshall Water or Calvary Water, obviously protection from surface contamination that is much more readily accessible than probably the aquifer down far deeper. So we would anticipate that dialogue would continue. We will have another meeting pretty soon. We're going to continue that, but we think that there's other things we can do together to make that part of the community much, much better and help them improve the quality of life and the quality value of their property. That's our whole goal.
I think it's a learning process for all of us.
Sure.
And it's healthy to have communication.
Well, for instance, his mom said to me, asked me about Cypress Creek, and he gave me the opportunity to again call back the court and say, guys, we got a problem in Cypress Creek, what can you do to fix it? And already I've had 2 court representatives contact me and talk about what Calvert City can do to assist those property owners outside the city to get that drainage issue and that flooding issue resolved. So those are the kind of things in the dialogue that come up and give us the ability to work together as a team and as a citizen group to be able to support each other and to be able to help each other make the area much better in life, much better for all of us. That's what we would anticipate, and those ongoing educational issues certainly have to be there. We're going to continue that dialogue.
There's still some landowners, there's a few that have reached out to me that attended the meeting that are still, they either don't support it or they're confused, they don't get the information. Obviously, the fiscal court doesn't have all the information.
I suppose, Judge, you never have 100% participation with everyone agreeing. I mean, we have speed limit signs on the interstate that says, not everyone agrees with the sign. When I drive home, I've heard that.
Well, my argument to that though would be that you got a landowner that hasn't even been advised of any of this. The first presentation, there was no contact with landowners. And I think, and if you look at the documentation that's with the Department of Water, it clearly states that there are to be public meetings and public hearings, and none of that had taken place. For me, before I give consent for someone's property, I would like to know that those property owners were contacted. I know I asked in this court if they were, and I was told that they were contacted when in fact they weren't. And that concerns me, because open communication is our responsibility. And if we got landowners that are still confused, I think that there's only 28 county landowners that we could find in that wellhead protection. And if those 28 county landowners, if there are still landowners that are not 100% understanding of what's going on, I think that it's the responsibility of us to inform them of what's going on. I know there's struggles, and I know that there's things that it's ongoing, but I think that's where the communication with the landowners who are going to be directly affected. I'm not going to be directly affected, but I think those landowners, we owe it to them to inform them of everything that our city and county governments are intending to do.
You have a comment or question in the back there?
I was just gonna say, I think most of the people wanted more information, like he said, like a paper, a printout saying what we can and can't can't do is what people are confused on.
And if you look at these forms, this is phase one of the Energy Environment Cabinet's application, the general instructions. I mean, it states clearly that that information should be provided. You know, if you look under section B, community planning team, you know, it provides as attachment 5 copies of public notices regarding wellhead protection efforts. Attachment 6, public comments and record of attendance for public meetings and wellhead protection. You know, it even talks about identifying the planning team members. Do we know who the planning team? There's questions that I know landowners have, but then there's questions that I know I have that I can't answer because I'm not the one that's submitting this.
Right. This is not, our presentation, our request of you guys, from you guys, is not general wellhead protection plan. It was just this one element. We need consent for this one piece of the plan. Roger, I suppose, come over here and tell you all about whatever there is in the whole plan. That's delegated to the Water and Sewer Department. They're the ones that deal with EPA, and I'm not really involved in that at all. I mean, I see it when Roger finishes it and gets it approved and hands it out. But if you want to know all about the wellhead protection program, then I guess Roger can come over here and tell you about it. But this particular thing is not that. It's not the plan in general. It's just this one element.
Maybe I didn't explain that very well. Before I give consent, you've got landowners that are saying that they don't understand what the city's plan is. And these forms that are being submitted, it talks about informing.
Did they say that after the meeting on Thursday night?
She just said it right now.
We did not get a printout for it, and cannot do that. That's simply that would be a simple thing for Calvin to provide us.
As a lawyer,
It's-
if this was your property, Greg, you would want in writing what was required, what was being restricted and what was required of you. I think all the commissioners would want that.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, the ordinance, what's required and what's not required is a reference to federal statutes. It's not like you can't, it doesn't spell out things in language that you or I would understand. It's more a reference to, here's the list of, it doesn't even give us the list of federal hazardous materials, but that list is extensive. It has to do with hydrocarbons, and frankly, when I got finished reading it, as a non-scientist, a non-engineer, I didn't know any more than when I started. It's just stuff that the federal government has decided constitutes poison that will mess up an aquifer. But I don't recognize it. It's not car oil and dog food. It's scientific names of stuff. And so honestly, I don't have a list, and I don't think there exists a list of every item that has one of these chemicals in it. I honestly think that doesn't exist. It's just a list of chemicals that are found in various things.
To know if you were putting those into the ground, and if you did not have any,
Because if you were going to,
I mean, even if there is a wellhead protection program, if we
Right.
don't know what we're not supposed to put in the ground, how do we keep from doing it?
I understand it, which is part of the reason for the zoning, for this particular zoning regulation, because if you were going to build some sort of a service industry, if you were going to build a service business of some kind that involved dropping something on the ground, then it would be incumbent upon the water and sewer to check and make sure that whatever it was you're putting on the ground doesn't have those elements in it that are prohibited by hazardous waste regulations. And it's kind of a one-off, you look and see. If you're gonna put in fertilizer manufacturing facility, then you would have to tell the water and sewer folks, well, here's the chemicals that we're using, and then they would have to check and see, is any of that violating one of these federal standards?
I want to read to you what was sent from the Water Quality Management section of the Watershed Management Branch out of Kentucky Division of Water. As part of the planning process, each system conducts regular surveys within these protection zones to identify potential sources of contamination. Each potential contaminant source must then be addressed with management strategies to ensure that it does not have a negative impact on the water supply. Some management strategies using existing regulations, and that's where the fuel storage tanks at gas stations, they're already regulated. So gas stations are already regulated. Some use education and outreach, and others use local zoning ordinances. It is the water system's responsibility to determine the best proactive practices within each area and work with the community to protect the water supply.
Sounds right.
Obviously, the state says that those practices are identified at the local area. I just wonder if the landowners have been informed. Apparently, I mean, there's a few of them that are still saying that they're not, or they haven't received the information. Maybe
Did they come to the meeting Thursday night, or you don't know?
some of them have, yeah.
They came to the meeting and
Yeah. The same email states that 97, the wellhead protection areas for Calvert City were delineated in 97, and those areas have been remained the same since.
Yeah.
So this has been going on since 97.
probably so.
Uh,
Well, by this, you mean wellhead protection concerns, yes, not zoning, but wellhead protection concerns.
Didn't that the well been, since 97, haven't they?
But what?
The wellheads have been relocated since 97.
I think.
Surely time doesn't pass that fast on me.
Yeah, they were moved because they were in an area that was getting some contamination. And
Correct.
with the financial assistance of industry, those wellheads were moved in.
Right.
You know, I'm an old guy too. I don't remember when, sometime between 1950 and now is when that happened, but I don't remember when that happened. But we did have to move them over to this area.
Surely it hadn't
because-
been 20 years
No,
since.
it was in the 90s that began the process.
Yeah, probably.
And a couple of wells have been drilled since then. The
Right.
Duke well,
Right.
certainly drilled since then, the new
That's
well.
my recollection too, so.
Yeah, probably in the 90s.
Correct.
But, you know, you run out of places for safe drinking water, and obviously that's why it's located out of the county, because the industrial complex and the EPAs insistence that you protect that wellhead area, and thus the location, and there's not many locations that the Incorporated Calvert City can identify and get drinking water from. Certainly, I see the need to do that, and I know Dale's family, and many of those people have been my neighbors and friends and patients in dental office for many, many years, and I know they're good enough people that they don't want Calvert City's wellhead or their family members that live in Incorporated Calvert City drinking contaminated water. That's all the concerns, and we should be concerned about that. We want to be good neighbors and so forth. And that's why I asked the question, and education and communication is the utmost importance as far as say we're all learning. It's been a good learning experience for all of us, but and that's why I asked Dale and about his neighbors if they had any problem with or any concerns, because the ones that I have talked to certainly talks about the general zoning authority, but I have gotten no opposition, or that's why I just asked if there is any, or besides one guy that was inebriated, that they had any. We certainly need to educate and communicate and have the ability to do that, but
I don't think we have to do that because this whole process evolves. Who would have ever thought that farmers would be contaminating all of us? And what he sprayed and what he put on the ground for his crop because he wants to make it as crop he could. Now, with medical knowledge and better understanding of the chemical relationships, we know that farmers must use their pesticides and insecticides and all their other herbicides in a traditionally respectful manner so it doesn't contaminate. That's all this does. It gives us the ability to be able to help control and to educate in the future forward. We can't go back to what we did 20 years ago. We did, all of us around the table, would have sins 20 years ago that we wish we'd never committed, because we surely don't want to bring them forth today. Now we can go forward and make sure that those things are resolved, and anything in that plan that's required, particularly by the federal government, because they're on our case all the time. Well, EPA and Calvert City, more than any other city in this community, I promise. They're in those plans all the time, and they're talking to us about issues. We want to make sure that that's held at this high standard, and we do what we need to do to protect that well.
I would like to add, I appreciate Mayor Jones talking to the Corps of Engineers about the Little Cypress Drainage Canal. That backs up not only from Calvert City, but all the way through the Gilbertsville Bottoms, all the way to Benton. And you're talking about regulating the wellheads in Calvert. When that floods, anything that's in that entire area is coming to Calvert City because it's going to come back down towards the river. So that needs to be cleaned out and stopped from spreading all over the land everywhere. That needs to be a part of this wellhead protection thing, in my opinion.
Well, that's a different issue and requires certainly much help. Mr. McConnell's office will have to be an important player in this role because the cost of that project, it's a phenomenal millions of dollar project to clean that stream from its mouth at the Tennessee River back to the area where it needs to be cleaned. It's been silted in for many, many years, needs to be done. But again, it's a community project. It's not a Calvert City project, but it's a community project where the entire community benefits from the efforts of, in this case, one lady who said, can we do something? So I think that's what these meetings do. They obviously provide opportunity for the dialogue to bring full circle those issues that need to be addressed, and shame on us if environmentally we don't address them. If we don't protect our environment, who's going to protect it?
And the zoning element is just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the last piece, it's just a piece. There's lots of pieces and what you're reading is the whole picture. And yeah, all of it's important. It is all important. The zoning element is just one piece. One of the things that you can do to help protect your groundwater. And education is another, and I guess there's probably a whole bunch of other things in the plan. But it's just, you do everything you can do to possibly make sure that you don't mess up your one source of water.
My question about that is, if it's been since '97, why has there not been any education in 20 years on it?
I'm not sure about the education. I think from what you're telling me, it sounds very reasonable. And I'm not sure why, just a guess, possibly, your house is outside the city limits, and it might have something to do with that. It may be because we've got no jurisdiction outside city limits, and maybe that's why you haven't been involved in that, is because you weren't in the pool. That's a possibility. But also, the wellhead protection stuff, although it started getting talked about maybe in '97, it didn't get to be an issue that you had to actually start filing documents and preparing plans and all of that kind of stuff until the mid-2000s-ish, something like that.
And Greg, another entity or aspect of that is that the rules change, EPA's rules change, and us that are older realize or remember when the Calvert City Chemical Complex, you could do things down there that there, is wide open. Government doesn't let you do that. The regulations dictate that you're a better citizen and with your waste products and what you manufacture and what you dump into the waters, Kentucky Lake and the river. And so the rules have changed there also. And then they change constantly.
Calvert City is required to provide written documentation to those people who are served by water service. And so that information is provided to them. Unfortunately, you're on the Marshall water side. If you're going toward Paducah, the Boston Tribe and beyond, all those people get the information from Calvert City's water quality as required by EPA. And I would say that's some of the reason that have been forwarded to y'all, because you're not on services.
They do get it with your water bill periodically.
Yeah, they get reports
Right.
on water quality and so forth.
Newsletter.
Yeah.
Right.
This waterhead protection plan isn't specific to the residents of Calvert. It's also involves county residents as well. And I think that's, for me, that's where I'm having the concerns with, because there's county residents that are finding out about this for the first time, and they're not 100% sure on the actual implications of it. And I think that that's not the fiscal court's responsibility to educate them. And I think we've identified that that hasn't taken place. And
Well, we know with Dale, we know with two people it hadn't taken place. So, it's just
When they
I
talk
suspect that, like you said, everyone outside of the city limits probably has not been contacted.
probably not. Well, they have now, but prior to this last Thursday's meeting.
Right, but
they
as far as
probably-
education.
Right.
When they talk about a list of chemicals, hazardous materials, there's a list that Code of Federal Regulations, 49 CFR 172.101
Right.
is a list of hundreds of chemicals that are considered hazardous materials. And that list is probably, I mean, that's generally the one that's referred to in all EPA documents, and in any case, it's got everything from organics to radionuclides to all types of waste and marine pollutants. So there's hundreds and I guess thousands of chemicals listed there. And that's generally what the list they refer to. But
And Calvert City wouldn't have the ability to regulate all those chemicals. That's an EPA issue. They would be involved. They'll come in, and their attorneys will be the ones involved. And you've got to have the person who doesn't follow EPA rules.
But we're the first bottleneck, or at least they want to make us the first bottleneck. It probably also has parts per million and so forth, what the acceptable.
well, not at that point. That'll be in other regulations. That's just the list. That's just the list. There would be water quality, and that would be under Division of Water regulations in other places, yeah.
They probably just want us to accept the responsibility for the first, for the first review, for the first bottleneck. Hopefully we'll catch it. If we don't, then it'll go to EPA and it'll be, it's just not, it's just complicated. And I do fully understand that you would like a list of these are the things that you can and can't do.
List of everything, if you look up bulk application online, there's other people that have done that have what they have and haven't done. We haven't got one paper on what you are and aren't gonna do.
Yeah, actually, the proposed ordinance itself is one paragraph long, and it just simply says, you can't, it just makes reference to the federal statute. Because it's just so voluminous that to try to be exhaustive, to try to give somebody an exhaustive list, well, I don't even think it could be done, because it's a moving
Some of
target.
the other counties that have bulk protection,
Uh-huh.
it was 6 to 10 pages online. So why can't Calvert make up a simple one
Well-
that has some information for people?
There has to be
Maybe
something
they
you
will.
can educate people on, or they wouldn't suggest educating them.
Right, and they probably do things like grouping things together, say pesticides, for instance. If you're gonna use a pesticide, then you need to check it before they probably don't give you a list of these pesticides you can use, these you can't, they probably don't go into that kind of detail, but they probably say these kinds of activities are the ones that you kinda need to be careful of. And that would be part of education, and I don't.
EPA makes those manufacturers put that on their product,
Well, that's generally,
but
yeah,
they
that's
dictate, it's EPA that does the dictating, not the city of Calvert City, I wouldn't assume. We're gonna be the ones that supersede the city of Calvert City on all these issues.
follow the manufacturer's instructions is generally all, is generally what they say.
I think that's the same as with the Hill idea, we follow the manufacturer's recommendations. Regardless of what they're using, whether it's on a list or not, we follow the recommendations. If you didn't, and you.
And your thought that Calvert City has a lot more to do with regard to wellhead protection is dead on. They'll never be done. They'll be doing wellhead protection 100 years after I'm gone. It just never ends. It's just forever. It's just forever.
So with a county with water and sanitation likewise.
Yeah, it never ends. It never ends.
Because the rules change and the cost goes on.
Right. And it's only now that we're thinking, okay, the wellhead actually goes outside city limits, so if we're gonna, it doesn't help if you protect just the wellhead within the city limits. when the lake runs beyond the city limits. I mean, if somebody's 3 feet outside the city limits and they poison it, it's gonna be just as poisonous as if they were inside. So we're now seeing, so we need to protect the whole aquifer, so. It's just sort of you just growing and learning and trying to do the best you can do with the cards you're dealt.
Don't want to be Flint, Michigan, do you?
We'd rather not be.
I think these reports are definitely detailed. It even talks about the wellhead protection plan of action as far as the testing. I mean, there's a lot of good information in here that the landowners,
Sure.
I think, need to have. But
Well, Calvert City's not had any jurisdiction at all outside its limits. Until EPA does, but Calvert City has not, and so I'm just suspecting that probably, well, I know that the mailing, the report mailing goes out to customers, to people that are using Calvert City water out of Calvert City aquifer. But if we extend our jurisdiction outside city limits, then it'll be everybody that's in that aquifer.
one of the things that's submitted to the Department of Water that I noticed in there is an actual map of the wellhead protection area. That wellhead protection area will show on that map that there's properties out in the county.
Right.
I think that if you specifically just notify your city residents and not the county residents are in that wellhead protection map. That's probably why these county residents have no idea or have a lot of questions pertaining to how it's going to affect them. I think that's a huge step that is, I don't know if it's required, it's obviously suggested on here, that hasn't taken place that I think needs to take
Well, it
place.
did take place Thursday night. We did send a letter to everybody, and then the 22 or however many showed up, we had that conversation and tried to answer all the questions. We didn't quit until the questions stopped.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying is the education piece isn't just one meeting.
Oh,
It's-
right, of course.
This talks about an actual team, a community planning team.
Right.
Is there a community planning team?
You know?
No, you can't do this.
I mean, this is what I'm looking at is the phase one.
Of the well.
Yeah, when you get to the 5-year form that you submit, I think it's phase one, phase two, and then the 5-year form. But if this is being submitted, then this information that's in this, and it's very detailed. I mean, this is actually, if I'm a landowner, and this is the information that's being presented, actually it even involves the community to participate in this. And I think I can tell you from some of them that have reached out to me, they would love to be a part of that community team. And there's your way to educate and inform the residents, both in the city and the county, is through that participation. I think that's something that may have been, I know she elaborated on other counties, but that may have been something that somebody's already forged that for us.
Other counties, they may have.
No,
They may have.
but I just,
Until we have a wellhead protection opportunity, we can't formulate a wellhead protection team. That's sort of getting the cart before the horse.
well, I
If we
think,
want to do the education, that's what we did Thursday night.
well,
We can't hold, I don't think, the past. The education had been in the past, maybe it wasn't complete, but I've been involved in a lot of education that wasn't complete.
well, I think the educational piece, Mayor, is you educate them before you ask. I mean, I'm responsible for the county residents and their concerns. Those county,
They are also county residents.
they are, but from what I understand, they've been made aware of the wellhead protection plan.
We're guessing.
Nobody knows.
I suspect the same because I know that 5-year plans have been submitted and approved. So I would assume that there has been, well, I do know that Roger, I've seen, just like Rick was talking about, there are mailings that Roger mails out to, I assume it's the customers, I'm not sure who mails it to. But there are things that are happening pursuant to a 5-year plan. But the details of that, I don't know.
Okay. I know that, what I do know is that there are still county residents that have concerns. looking at these documents that are required to be submitted, it spells out some of the things that have to take place. And obviously, you've got some county residents here that have said they've never received anything. So it'd be fair to say that maybe the city residents, because they're a user, have been notified, but not the county residents.
I would guess that to be true. I don't know, but I would guess that to be true.
I would love to have the education part before we do this. I mean, to use Rick's analogy about driving the speed limit, what you guys seem to be doing is, well, we're not gonna bother to put up the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit signs because we know people aren't gonna do it anyway. We'll just take away their cars. I mean, if you give people a chance to comply, I think most people would comply. And like I say, I'm completely for protecting the water. But I don't think everything's been done that needs to be done.
Yeah, this zoning regulation would be, I would expect it to be rare that it even comes up. It would be when somebody's gonna develop something. Otherwise, it's just not an issue that, I would not expect it to come up often at all.
But even the third grader at Benton Elementary can see that a salvage yard, a junkyard, something that's taking place right on top of that with the fuels and the oils and the gasoline on the roadways leading to the field. That is not a good situation. That's easy to identify. I'm not a chemist and, we're involved in EPA, I don't speak that language, but even I know that is not, EPA is starting to tattoo the city of Calvert City, according to Roger, and this is the one thing we all realize, you can't do that. You got $8 million of investment down the road, and you don't want to get into it for that reason, but you don't want to contaminate those wells because our friends and neighbors and relatives live there and drink that water.
Along those lines, Jason and I have talked about a couple of properties out there where there was some automobile accumulation and activities, and the county is prohibited from addressing it because of the statute, right? That's what you and I came to.
You're talking about the acreage?
Yeah.
Because of the acreage?
It's over 10 acres.
Right.
And so the county was not able to address it. If the city had zoning regulations in that area, the city could have addressed it
But
long ago.
hasn't the EPA already addressed that though?
Well,
Now, apparently.
they're working on it. They're trying.
Sure.
But the city could have addressed it a long time ago if we had these zoning regulations in place, because it would be a violation to run a junkyard in that area,
Sure.
in the wellhead protection would be a violation of the zoning ordinance, and you could address that.
And I guess my statement to that would be, if you had told all the property owners that junkyards were not allowed over the aquifer, then the problem might not have ever occurred to start with.
Maybe, but that information wasn't, you might be right, but that was
I
said
understand.
a lot of times.
I know personally, from my standpoint, I wouldn't put things like that could get in there if,
Right.
if you're aware that it might affect all.
Right.
So,
And most people, thank goodness, most people wouldn't,
right.
but some people would. Anyway.
Commissioners, I think we've heard the presentation. I think we're at that point where we need to move forward.
I'll make a motion, we grant their request. They sent the letters out, everybody was invited that wanted to speak on our position. I have no problem with it.
Like I say, as I have asked Dale, and he's got family and their family has been there for many, many years in that area, the double-digit people that have contacted me or I contacted them, like I say, and I think I've heard Dale say that you know, education is important. He wants to continue to hear from the city. You know, with everybody that lives there can get the same list that the judge has by going on the internet. But I think it's important to educate and let these people know. But just the emergency management director sitting right next to me comments that to me during the meeting that it's essential that we protect those. You know, that's the right thing to do, and we need to continue to educate and so forth. But we're
What
Hang on a second. Are you making a second? Because there was a motion.
I'd like to hear him say it's still discussion.
And we
I'd
have
like to sit here with the rest.
My question is, what incentive does Calvert City have to do the education if the zoning is granted without it?
I can tell you that according to the county attorney, that we can revoke that privilege at any point in time. And if they do not continue on with education, and if we don't get a report back that that's being done, then is that correct? That's something that we can remove.
Yes.
We can remove their authority. Absolutely. And it's just a vote of this court, correct? I want to be sure that's
Any
right.
reason or no reason at all?
Well, I think we're leaving out a lot of meat and potatoes in there, but yes.
Are you comfortable with that?
Do we know what the,
You're
they're
one
gonna
of the-
regulate?
Well, I don't know the
That's
procedure.
one of the concerns of the landowners.
It would sound like that's a step in the right direction. Like, that gives at least us some protection.
Well, I can't speak for Calvert City in the future, but I can speak for Calvert City today. Calvert City today will diligently continue its efforts to make every opportunity available to those property owners to get education to them and to make them an integral part of what this well invitation does.
Yes,
I can only speak to
We
that.
could incorporate some of the county
Oh, we
people
would.
that are not within.
We would, yeah.
that-
We would.
That would
Yeah,
be a very good
I
step.
think that'd be a great idea.
I'd say it's just a learning experience for us all. Those are all good ideas that are thrown out. It's healthy to have communication and discuss, healthy conversation. I second Commissioner Bowen's motion.
I think we've had lengthy discussion. Any further discussion? I do have one question. The map that was presented, is it a scientific map?
Yes, the one Roger had.
At the very
The
first
very
meeting.
first map for the wellhead
There was a
protection.
wellhead protection area map.
Yeah,
That's what's referenced in the resolution.
yes, it's a map that was drawn by an engineer defining the exterior of that aquifer. Is that what you meant by scientific?
Well, I know the map that was presented, I'm being told, was drawn by Casey Counts upstairs. Now, which map are you talking about?
Something that Fiscal Water, I just found, that, if you notice that aquifer, that's a protection area all the way from up at, Webster County up there, all the way down to Graves County here. I mean, it apparently follows that river, and they all those rivers. So it's that's one big protection area.
Probably is.
No, the map I'm talking about is the map that,
It just showed the wellhead protection area over the,
the wellhead protection.
overlay.
It-
yeah.
From
That
my
was,
understanding,
that was-
Casey was the one that drafted that.
yeah, Casey, is that the GIS? Yeah, Casey actually did prepare that map, but it should have been with information. My understanding from Roger was that was the information that was provided to Casey for that overlay. That Roger, and I'm not sure what engineers he used to identify
Sure.
the exterior of the aquifer, but he was providing the information to Casey for drawing it. There actually was, like for the plan, there's a level 1 and a level 2, and those are just like an oval. But then the level 3 is the exterior of the aquifer. And Roger was the one that ultimately was responsible for identifying that.
Is that the same map that's been submitted to the Department of Water? Per these forms, the requirements? Do we know if that's the same map?
It probably is not literally the same piece of paper. It's the same parameters, but it wouldn't be the same piece of paper because that was a zoning, that was made particularly for zoning because it was an overlay on a zoning map. When Casey prepared that zoning map, he took the information off of the wellhead protection stuff that had been presented by Roger to the state and superimposed it on the zoning map to show where it laid with reference to highways and zones and so forth.
Okay. So we had a first and a second motion. Any further discussion?
I'd like to make sure we get a report occasionally, I don't know, from education, from any of our county constituents, that, you know, we're going forward with some education using maybe the planning committee, including some county employee or county residents. We need to have something going forward to be sure that, you know, this wellhead protection plan is being carried out and the steps are being fulfilled in our county. Constituents understand the process.
Like we get some sort of court suggestions for when this should take place, how often it should take
Well,
place?
but let me be clear, because now we're getting into the fiscal court being responsible for further things. Here's the form for phase one. It talks about a community planning team and explains
I
exactly.
just want them to inform us of those steps, so that those steps are being
Bob,
taken.
I can
It
tell you
hasn't been
that
taken.
these people are in my district, and I can assure you that I will contact, obviously, Dale, the young lady in the back, or the two of the interested parties that took the time to be here and be involved, and I can assure you that I will report back to this court and stay in contact with him and make sure that their wishes are granted. And I know these guys that I've worked with them for years, and Roger Colbert and John Ward, and you know, they're gonna do what they say, and I have no doubt about that. But I will make sure that he stays in contact. Obviously, he's taken the time to be here and was here last time with his family, and I'll make sure that happens.
The best source of accountability sits right there. Those reporters are the best source of accountability you have in government.
I'm gonna say it again. Here is the form. This is the required form that has to be submitted. There is a community planning team that had to be identified. What we found out today, that there hasn't been.
No, they may have, we're just not aware, if there has, I don't know how that worked. I don't know if there is or there isn't.
You're asking somebody in D company what headquarters company did, we don't know what headquarters company did.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you.
Well, I'm just asking you.
This is.
Disagree or not?
This is a planning team. We got county residents that are still not 100% informed. But discussion. We're gonna go to a vote. Rick, we'll go to a vote.
Yes, not general,
Correct.
not general authority, but zone head protection only, yes.
As what was on the screen, correct?
Yes, the one of the two ordinances that had not general, but that's what the motion is.
Not the zoning, just,
Not
well,
the general zoning authority, the wellhead protection.
This language.
Yes, I understand. I've read it many times.
Johnny? Vote.
yes.
Bob?
Yes.
I'm gonna vote no. All right, thank you for your presentation today. And I'm gonna vote no because county residents are still, and have yet to receive, I think, the detailed information. And I don't feel that I'm in a position to grant consent, when I have county residents that are asking me questions that I can't answer. So I think it's the city's responsibility, to inform those county residents how that, the consent that's been passed today is going to affect them. I think that's our due diligence to inform them. Next under guest, Sean Miller, Sharkow Bridge.
Thank you all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Good morning, sir.
I'll keep this pretty brief. is in reference to the Charcal Bridge. We've hit our next benchmark, which is the submittal of final draft plans to the judge and Wendy. I'm going to say we got good news and bad news, even though we really don't have bad news. I guess the bad news, we're slightly behind schedule from what we had originally estimated. But our original estimate for cost of the bridge was somewhere in the neighborhood, if y'all remember, between $800,000 and $850,000. Our new estimates, including everything, demolition and removal of the old bridge, the field testing, the bridge itself, final design, engineering, the whole shebang, is down to $605,000. So quite a bit of savings that we realized once we had done some checking in. We realized that we had money in there for utility work, if that was going to be, utility relocation was going to be an issue. From all the conversations I've had with the city of Calvert City, Paducah Water, which has a line nearby, Casey in the GIS office, there's no utilities to deal with, so we're able to save a lot of money there. Right now, there's only a couple of things left that needs to be done before we can actually put this out for a construction bid. One of the issues that still is outstanding is the right-of-way. I know we've talked about it. We believe, the county believes that there is right-of-way, general right-of-way, probably 30 foot out from center line along that road. I did the deed research myself, and all I could find was one deed, and I'll tell you, it was deed book 175, page 95, referencing 170 foot out from the center of the channel going in each direction. So 85 feet out, either direction going on the road from the bridge. We really wanted to see 260 feet. But again, if the county, it's up to the county to decide whether or not, if you think that right of way is good, then that's up to you all. If you want to look into it a little more, try to find something that I didn't. Going through those deed books is just following the numbers. That's all I could find. The other thing is we're going to have our permits. We're submitting those now. Have to have Andy Levistow as a local floodplain coordinator sign off on those. But otherwise, we don't anticipate any major hiccups. As I said, we're slightly behind schedule, but it looks like we're going to be able to save a lot of money. Now, those numbers, again, they're still just estimates. It'll depend on a lot of market factors in your construction, whether or not, some of these firms are hungry for work, whether or not the concrete prices stay pretty stable, things like that. But, obviously, that's a huge jump downwards in the numbers. So everything looks pretty good. We still anticipate, if everything goes according to plan, sometime to have the bridge bid out within the next month. Construction started and completed, hopefully by mid-fall, maybe or even early fall.
Good savings, Sean, that's a.
We tried to shoot pretty high, just in case, and it turned out there's some details in there, and the plans, as I said, have been submitted to the judge. They're available if anybody wants to review them. Wendy also has a copy of the plans. If you want to look at them, there's a little bit of that information, like I said, on the right-of-way. The Moore family and a couple of others actually live along the corridor that we're talking about. So you can take a look at those if you like. We also have this letter here. I don't know if Desiree put a copy of this or if y'all got this in your packet, but like I said, you can pretty much see where we're at. We're pretty happy with how things have progressed so far. 94.5 feet ended up being the total size of the bridge. We floated between 90 and even up to 112 at one point. And 94 feet is what we're going to need. The approach work is pretty minimal, so there's also some savings there.
I think it's minimal.
Suggest that we look at a survey to get the exact dimensions.
What we found in the
on
deed
right-of-way.
books, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
No, Lloyd was asking. What we found in the deed books that I was able to find was right-of-way listed for the county and it was from 1973, sometime in there, Wendy, if I remember right, when that bridge had been replaced back in 1973. So there was right-of-way going 170 feet out from the center of the bridge, which would be about center channel, 85 feet in each direction, going down the road and up the road. Again, like I said, what we'd like to see is right-of-way for 260 feet instead of 170 for the amount of construction that's going to be happening. And of course, you're going to need temporary easements, which is something else that Jeff will have to deal with. We can get you a map to show where exactly those construction easements will need to be. I can't imagine that's going to be a huge problem. The local families seem like they want to get that bridge taken care of because it's obviously an inconvenience for them.
Don't assume anything.
Yeah, well, no, exactly.
Well, I think we need that map, and we need to have it surveyed so we know who owns what, and then we can get those, then we can draft the temporary permanent easements for because we're talking an extra, 90 feet?
For construction, yeah.
Yeah.
For the temporary easement, it's gonna be pretty large.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna be talking about getting a lot of equipment in and out of there, and because of the landscape, because of that bridge trestle, we're not exactly sure where that equipment's gonna have to go to get to the place it needs to be. I mean, I know
We need
that
to-
there was trouble with the demolition as well.
Yeah. We need a motion for that. A motion for survey for the affected area on Sharkout Bridge for the right-of-way.
So moved.
That's not something you want to do, though? Engine?
No, you probably, I mean, we can, but you would be more cost efficient for you to have either BFW or one of our guys do it.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll get on that, so that way, because I know that's a tight spot down there.
In the meantime, we'll get you a map showing exactly where those temporary construction easements need to be. That way you can draw
Provide
those
those
up.
to the survey.
And then, of course,
County survey?
Mhm.
at the next sort of benchmark will us be to give you all the bid packet to put in the newspaper. You all can advertise that however you see fit. As I told the judge, standard minimum is 2 weeks in the local newspaper, but you can do pretty much whatever you want with it. My suggestion would be, and I think it will be a requirement of rural municipal aid, since there is some state money involved, is that you will have to have somebody who is pre-qualified, a pre-qualified contractor with the state. Generally, you want to see them pre-qualified in Class E6. I may be getting that one wrong. It's in small bridge, small structures. Generally speaking, though, they just want the firm to be pre-qualified in something, if they're gonna be doing work using any kind of state funds. So you probably want to, we can put that in our advertisement that we give to y'all to put out. You'll have them pick up the construction packets, or the bid packets, which will include everything they need to submit. Then we'll review during a public opening of all the bids, and they'll be sealed. And we'll decide what time y'all wanna do that later on, once we get to that point. But this, like I said, this was the next major benchmark. This is a big step. And here, there's gonna be a lot of just detailed stuff that needs to get done before it can go out to bid, but it's moving really quickly and really good.
You got a ballpark figure on how much the utility relocation that you didn't have to do, how much of a savings was that?
I wanna say we had 40 to 50,000 for utilities.
Good savings.
And right-of-way, I think there might have been more in there for right-of-way, and there still is an amount for right-of-way, I think 10,000. I think it was actually more than that in the original, but that one's kind of hard to anticipate what it's gonna look like, but there's hopefully, through at least the use of the temporary easements, it won't be much of a cost at all.
No, I think DLZ's done a good job, Sean. I told
Appreciate
you
it.
yesterday, I'm excited with these numbers, and I know things can still change, but
Yeah.
we don't know what's.
There's still
what
estimates,
into.
but it looks a
Yeah.
lot better than they did when we put this first out, so. That shows you, and as I said, before, it's really important to get in to do that preliminary investigation, because you can learn a lot
Yeah.
before you start. So.
No,
Any other questions?
no, I appreciate DLZ's service.
Absolutely. I'll get back to you, Judge, once we have the permits in place. As I said, we'll be getting a hold of Andy about signing off the floodplain coordinator. And once we have our bid packages ready, we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
I'll move on in their old business, approve the minutes, May 2nd, meeting, the workshop meetings on 8th and 9th.
Motion to approve the minutes of those meetings.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Carries. Ordinance 2017-03911, administration and operations, second reading. I think Jason, y'all made those changes that day, I believe. Should have it in your packet. Should be in this packet there, Jason.
Yeah. This is the latest version.
Read the changes.
It's fairly short, so
Mhm.
I'll just go through the whole thing. This Marshall County Fiscal Court Ordinance Number 2017-03 911 Emergency Telephone Service Enabling Ordinance, whereas KRS 65.760 provides that a local government may by ordinance establish an emergency telephone service and provide for the governance of the administration and operation. Whereas KRS 65.760 provides that a local government may levy fees to raise the necessary funds for the administration and operation of emergency telephone service. Whereas the Marshall County Fiscal Court wishes to take advantage of these provisions in order to provide its citizens with a quality emergency telephone service. Now therefore be it ordained by the Fiscal Court of Marshall County as follows. Section 1 title. There is hereby enacted the 911 emergency telephone service of Marshall County, which may be referenced by the short title Marshall County 911. Section 2 administration. Personnel. Section A. Appointing authority for the Marshall County 911 Director and subordinate personnel shall be the Marshall County Judge Executive with approval of the Marshall County Fiscal Court. Marshall County 911 Director and other subordinate employees of the Marshall County 911 shall be subject to the policies and procedures of the Marshall County Administrative Code as adopted by the Marshall County Fiscal Court. B, operations. Day-to-day operations and administration of Marshall County 911 shall be the responsibility of the Marshall County 911 Director, who shall also be department head as that term is used in the Marshall County Administrative Code. These duties include, but are not limited to, 1, preparing an annual budget to present to the Marshall County Fiscal Court, 2, keeping the Marshall County Fiscal Court informed as to ongoing affairs of Marshall County 911, 3, preparing work schedules for subordinate employees of Marshall County 911, 4, ensuring that all personnel are kept current on any and all required licenses and certifications, 5, attending the quarterly alliance meetings to ensure ongoing open lines of communication between Marshall County 911 and the various agencies that utilize and rely on Marshall County 911 for services. 6, preparing supplemental policies and procedures if necessary, not in conflict with the Marshall County Administrative Code and with approval of the Marshall County Fiscal Court. And 7, any and all other necessary duties to provide for the operation of an efficient emergency telephone service. C, criminal justice information system link NCIC. Management and control of the criminal justice information system link NCIC shall be the responsibility of the Marshall County Sheriff in accordance with the criminal justice information services security policy. These duties include, but are not limited to, 1, ensuring that all minimum required security policies are followed pursuant to the executed management control agreement and the policies and procedures incorporated therein. 2, adopting additional policies and procedures if necessary, not in conflict with minimum required security policies. And 3, keeping the Marshall County Fiscal Court informed as to any issues that might arise with CGIS link NCIC. D, Ordinance Board. For disputes that are otherwise unable to be resolved with respect to operations of Marshall County 911 not involving personnel, a grievance procedure is hereby established to facilitate resolution of these disputes. The grievance procedure shall take place as follows. 1, the head of an agency utilizing Marshall County 911 services may initiate a grievance by providing written notice to the Marshall County 911 Director. The grievance shall contain a statement outlining the substance of the grievance and a brief explanation of the events that precipitated the grievance. For each grievance filed with respect to the operations of Marshall County 911 not involving personnel, a 3-member grievance board shall hear the grievance with the 3 members to be chosen among the following individuals. A, chiefs of the fire departments. B, chief of police of Benton. C, chief of police of Calvert City. D, Marshall County EMT Director. E, Marshall County Coroner. F, Marshall County Animal Director. G, Marshall County Emergency Management Director. H, Marshall County Sheriff. A 3-member board for each grievance shall be chosen by the Marshall County Judge Executive or his or her designee with approval of the Marshall County Fiscal Court at the next scheduled meeting of the Marshall County Fiscal Court. The 3-member board shall be chosen so that there are no conflicts of interest between the members of that particular 3-member board and the agency that initiated the grievance. 6, within 5 working days following formation of a particular grievance board, the 3 members chosen to perform that particular grievance board shall meet at a designated time and place to hear the grievance. The hearing before the grievance board shall be informal. Hearings shall be recorded. 1 person on that grievance board shall be chosen by the 3 members to act as chair and may administer oaths. Decisions by the grievance board shall be in writing, issued within 2 days following the hearing, and shall be final. Hearings before the grievance board shall be subject to Kentucky open meetings and open records requirements. One thing that did not get included on this that I think Brad and I talked about is that under D1, the head of an agency utilizing Marsh County 911 services may initiate a grievance by providing written notice to the Marsh County 911 director and serving a copy to the Marsh County Judge Executive. It's made it to that time. Yeah, and simultaneously delivering a copy to the Marsh County Judge Executive's office. That way the court is informed on notice that there's been a grievance filed.
Jason, I know it's a technicality, but you still got EMT, you reckon it's EMS is what it's supposed to be.
I can change that right now.
Jason, you can do alliance meets bi-monthly, the alliance meets every other month rather than quarterly. So there's actually 6 meetings.
Okay. They're actually bi-monthly.
Where's that at?
B, operations number 5.
Quarterly, and what are they?
Attending the bi-monthly. There you go.
On D1, you're delivering a copy to who?
There's the updated language. Okay. Yeah, it just added simultaneously delivering a copy to the Marsh County Judge's Executive Office.
Is that ready to add fiscal court? You can be informed of it also.
I would hope that, I mean, we could put that in there, but I think that's implied that it would be to the fiscal court.
There's no problem adding it if you're comfortable with that in there. Would you add commissioners with that?
Simultaneously being city restrictive. Can you do that?
It's a good point, Bob.
Just one.
Have to be multitasking. And, okay, take out simultaneously. After delivery. Right, forthwith.
That's some lawyer speak.
Anybody else?
Save all this with.
All right. That's the second reading. Need a motion on that. motion on the second reading of the 911 ordinance.
You're needing this, and put you in authority over this NCIC, correct?
Do what now?
So you need this to give you the authority over NCIC?
Right now, we don't have any,
That's what I mean.
anybody else, yeah.
Jeff, do you want to elaborate on the position that we're in as far as Lincoln CIC, the memorandum of agreement with the state, the lack of?
Well, I mean, yeah, you've been kind of holding off on this for some time now, because that former board, that agreement obviously is no longer. It was just kind of tabled, thinking that something would happen with the state as far as funding. Obviously, the funding and the management are two different issues, and there has to be some accountability for that NCIC. And there's only either a board or a criminal justice office that can do that. So you are in need of organizing something there to.
And the sheriff, in this proposed ordinance, I have no problem with that. That is a manual about that thick, and he doesn't need an advisory board. It is the law, and he's got to make sure that that's followed. No ifs and buts about it. I understand that portion of it. And I understand the urgency to pass something, but as I mentioned in the last meeting, when we changed some of the language to include with approval of fiscal court, I had mentioned, and I have gone back and talked to those individuals again, but the grievance process and the reference to the alliance board and so forth, I talked to the emergency management director, I talked to the sheriff, I talked to the 911 director, I talked to all 9 fire chiefs individually, and the mayor of Calvert City, the mayor of Benton, and the police chiefs of those 2 entities. And the alliance, and every single one of them told me the same thing. The alliance is a broken tool. Every one of you, is that not what, are these 9 fire chiefs, these 3 people told me that, the 2 mayors, that it is a broken tool. That it's attended by the fire chiefs, not the fire chiefs, some of the fire chiefs don't even attend. That's why they form their own. But they were adamant, every single one of these people were adamant that in this document, they would like to see a board that was identified in this document so that they had a seat at the table. And I heard loud and clear that they feel like the 8 agencies that use this, and I agree with them 100%, that they have the ability more than Rick Cock or Johnny Bowen or Bob Gold or Kevin Neal to direct, and it needs to be a checks and balances, and they want a voice at the table. And I have proposed a makeup of a board of 9 board members that meet monthly, and all those entities, everybody could live with that. And made up of 3 law enforcement, which the first being the sheriff or his or her appointee, the second being the police chief of Calvert or his or her appointee, and the third seat being occupied by the city of Benton and the police chief and his or her appointee. And that was 3 from law enforcement, the three from fire, the 4th, 5th, and 6th seat would be occupied by a consensus of the fire chiefs, the 9 fire chiefs in Marshall County at their meeting to have representation. The 7th seat would be occupied by, in this case, the emergency management director was Kurt Kirtner, who's also assistant coroner and also very involved in the rescue squad, would give those people a seat at the table. The 8th seat being held by the ambulance director or his or her appointee, and the 9th seat by the animal control director with hers or his appointee. 9-member board. That's, and talk to these people individually, all 9 fire chiefs, emergency management director, sheriff, 911 director, mayors of both cities, and police chief of both cities, and they felt that would be something that they could all live with, and everybody has a voice.
I have a question. What is that board gonna manage? Is it an advisory board for who?
That's an advisory board to meet with the 911 director and voice their concerns.
Do we have the authority to tell the city's police chiefs to sit on that board? Does this fiscal court have the authority to tell the chiefs of police to sit on that board?
No, but the mayors, they're a little bit different than the sheriff of Marshall County. He's an elected official. The police chiefs of those 2 cities are appointed by the mayors, and they want a seat at the table. They are asking for that seat at the table.
The mayors are asking?
They're asking, and they have that through their police chief, as it was done previous to the exploration in 2012. And that was all because of the 51% law enforcement. We're not talking about that portion of it. That's NCIC, which
I'm aware of
has
that.
nothing to do with 51% law enforcement. But I'm just voicing their concerns, and I feel like that the 8 entities listed here in this ordinance identified that use 911 for the protection of the citizens of Marshall County, they need a seat at the table. They deserve a seat at the table. That's their lifeline. This law enforcement, fire protection, ambulance, emergency management, some of the most critical services that we provide the citizens of Marshall County for their tax dollars. And that's the only thing that the citizens of Marshall County get for their tax dollars is service. And
Nobody, let me interrupt, Trippy. Nobody's arguing that the structure of this. You're talking about a 9-member board. I think you're leaving out too the fact that we had a interlocal agreement with a 7-member board, and we had a lot of problems, did we not? We had problems not only with the operational level, but the HR level. That 7-member board, if you talk to some of those same individuals involved, they would tell you that was complex and it caused a lot of problems. The advisory board, it's not going to solve everything. A 9-member board, increasing the members of that board, having the alliance meeting. We're hearing now that the alliance meeting is basically broken. Is that right?
Ask him, ask her. Ask these 9 people. I did. I took the time. Ask the police chiefs.
But what I'm saying is that alliance board is made up of the same agencies that you're breaking down at 9. I don't think we solved the problem. I still think we're jumping out of the one sinking boat into another sinking boat.
These people see that we're solving a problem because they're very passionate that board exists, and they're very passionate that advisory board be recognized in this document. I've gone out one-on-ones, not as a group, but
I think maybe I can shed some light on it. I know that those of us that attend the Alliance meetings, sometimes they're very well attended, and in those cases, which is what I shared with Rick when he asked me, I think that'd be great. If they are very well attended and everybody feels like they have a voice and they can share those with me, that's wonderful. The concerns that I was hearing are, and I've outlined it in my feedback to you all, are we still gonna have a voice in the way you all handle policy and procedure things? That is the responder's question to me. If they have a question about how we do something policy-wise, do they go straight to the fiscal court, or is there a body, if you will, that in that ordinance outlines how we handle those policy discrepancies? So I think that's really what their concern is. If they have a question about how we do something procedurally, what's their vehicle to be able to get that to you all?
That's the information I received.
Okay, so not so much a board, but outlining how policies and procedures
Policies
on
and
the day-to-day
procedures,
operations.
A board, a committee, whatever you want to call it, that could go over policies and procedures and advise on, make recommendations.
And pass those
Right.
recommendations on.
And that-
That's what
Works
that's
for
the
us.
information I
Right.
received.
We're the pointy.
And that's not, we're not wanting to change that. That's at their level.
Well, the board used to do that, Judge, and so like what they're talking about is. if
I
you-
understand.
Yeah.
I understand. The Alliance meeting, I mean, this is where all those agencies are
They're not asking
present.
for HR, policy,
Right.
that type of policy.
Right, I understand that, but I'm just saying that if, I'm hearing that the Alliance meeting is broken.
If they would attend
That's the first I'm hearing about that,
Well,
that it's
just
broken.
ask the people, they're sitting right here, three of them.
I'm not saying that it is, I'm just saying that, but what we're talking about, the same agencies that are on the roll call for that. So what you're saying is you want a specific board to manage the day-to-day operations, an advisory board
No, she
to manage.
does that.
I think they just want input. If they're in conflict, if, for example, fire and EMS sometimes have conflicting policies and directives,
Sure.
which we get
Yes.
involved in. So they're wanting to know what's the vehicle for us all to sit down and say, this is our first responders program, who's gonna draft policy? Will they be going to the commissioners who may not be as knowledgeable, or is
No,
there a
we don't
body?
want that.
I didn't think you.
No,
No, we don't want
We're not as knowledgeable.
And that's where-
People have the knowledge.
When you look at the Alliance meeting, the 9 members that you talked about are represented at the Alliance
And I
meeting.
did ask, could we not have a
I'm-
911 meeting like prior to the Alliance meeting to get them there? They don't, a lot of them don't come. I mean, that's just the.
Well, and these people told me these fire chiefs don't come.
Yeah.
Session, which doesn't need to be one.
Well,
You know.
I get all that. I truly do. I get all that. The thing is we had a 7-member board and we had problems, okay? Now we're wanting to make it a 9-member board. I don't think we've identified what the problems were then. The Alliance meeting, you've got every agency that's
They will
available.
Attend, and they do not attend all the time. That's the big thing, get them all to attend.
Sure. If they don't attend, that's not a fiscal court responsibility. It's an agency responsibility.
Right, but it still is going to cause issues, and how does she or the rest of the responders, how do we handle that? Because there are differences between, just for example, I mean, we've got 11 fire departments now, and each one of them may do something differently and ask
Sure,
dispatch to do
yes.
something differently. In my opinion, it all needs to be more uniform, and that's been the whole issue all along.
And could that have been accomplished with the 7-member board?
It was tried, let's put it that way.
Exactly. So we're wanting to make it a 9 or,
And-
there's really no, there is a problem there. And you guys know that.
Sure.
And there's a lot of personalities, there's a lot of chiefs and I used to call it the alpha males in the military. But the problem is that your problems at that level, the fiscal court can't fix that.
No.
That's at y'all's level. And if representatives from the agencies don't show up to the meetings, they're disservicing the members that work for them in that agency, because they are the voice for their people.
And
The-
you are right, and they want a voice, and fire on the Alliance meeting that I attended on March 23rd, and the judge did, and Bob also did, it was loud and clear. There was apparently, I think there was 2 people from ambulance, Kurt Kirkner from emergency management, and the rest of them were firefighters and so
So
on.
why couldn't we just create a committee off the Alliance, because they have committees, and then we schedule those meetings? And then if they as a group have a concern, they bring it to you all, that would be their vehicle for
Well,
policy.
that's their vision. with
The
the-
They would
day-to-day
bring it
operations
to
don't.
the director.
Yeah, the day-to-day operations, you're, what you just explained, and I totally get it. I've seen it. That's not, that shouldn't be at our level.
No, that's not exactly.
That's
what
at your
they're saying.
level. What I'm saying is that there is no, it doesn't matter how you present this, okay? You're still gonna have those problems because it's the way it's the individuals that are, the chiefs, the fire department chiefs, the law enforcement, y'all have to work that out at your level. Having the alliance meeting, the subcommittee, all that stuff, that's where all the agencies come together. If it is really important for all those agencies to work together on those policies, the alliance meeting on that roll call had all those agencies represented. If they're not showing up, that tells me it's not important to that agency. That needs to change. That needs to change. It doesn't matter how many ordinances we put in place. If that doesn't change, you're going to continue to have the same problems. So that's what those individuals, just like the ones I spoke to, need to hear. It needs to change at that level. We can't change that. As far as this ordinance, we went from a 7-member board to a single law enforcement agency, putting it under the alliance meeting because that's where all the agencies are represented. If you put it under a 9-member board, you're still going to have to fix that problem.
You're gonna have problems with the 9-member board, just like you do with the 7-member board, but they're adamant that they want that board.
The issue, I guess, with the 7-member board, and what I've heard at least, was that it was skewed to law enforcement, and that's not the case, or that doesn't have to be the case now. It was skewed to law enforcement because of the NCIC portion of it, and that was possibly not being handled exactly correctly, but it was skewed to law enforcement, and I guess that's what I've heard anyway from some of the other agencies that they would like a more level playing field.
Well, and
policies and procedures.
And you're right, and let me say why that information is only specific. A fire chief, some of those agencies that don't have access to that information. I mean, it's very specific of who manages that. That's not us. You're right. That's not us. That's the state and the federal mandation. Now, the 51%, as far as putting that 7-member board together with 51% law enforcement, that was in compliance with that policy. Putting in the HR, because we did have HR problems. We still have HR problems because you had that board that did it all. The day-to-day operations, I can tell you, the fiscal court, we do not want to be involved in that because that's not our place to be involved in that.
Nor should we be.
And that's where the day-to-day operations, the problems that you're exhibiting or the concerns that they had today are the exact same concerns that they had prior to. We can't fix that. That's what I'm saying. That's going to be at y'all's level. The leaders are going to have to come together. Just having a seat at the table is not going to fix that problem. It's a lot further, a bigger issue than having a seat at the table.
The entities that I just mentioned and talked to, they think it will solve the problem. They think it's a good start. That's not my opinion, that's their opinion. 9 fire chiefs, say I've talked to the emergency management director, the sheriff, the 911 director, both mayors and both police chiefs. And they can all live, that's something they can all live with.
Mm-hmm.
They can all agree upon it. The alliance meeting, it's just, it's a broken tool. These 3 people told me that as well as everybody else. The firefighters, as Bob said, and I know the firefighters, some of the people that I've talked to told me that they talked to Bob and they talked to Johnny. And they're adamant. They want to see a 9-person board. As Bob said, that fire department's had 1 representative on there. They didn't think that was enough.
Read number 5. I mean, I think number 5 of this ordinance fixes that because, again, I don't think the fiscal court, we do not have the authority to tell chiefs of police to attend the meeting. We don't.
Their
We don't have
their
to.
mayors do. In Calvert City and Benton, their mayors have the authority to tell them.
We don't have the authority then to ask them to serve on this grievance board either.
They want to do
I mean,
that.
That's
They
right.
want to sit
They
on
want
that
to do
table.
this, they
They're
really have,
passionate about
they
that.
would like this to be before the grievance. They would like to be able to
Right.
look at policies and procedures And then the grievance procedure, certainly, if they can't agree with the director, and if the director doesn't agree with them, then they could go,
Correct.
then they can go to the grievance procedure.
Right.
That's what they're
And I
telling
think
me.
number 5 is what we're trying to attempt there,
Exactly.
because you're gonna have departments that are not gonna show up.
We discussed a committee, I discussed with the information I received, the person I talked to, a committee. They didn't just throw that out offhand, so I don't know, but they'd like for it to meet, they were wanting it to meet separately, separate from the alliance.
I can tell you,
But they
every
won't.
single one of
Yeah,
these
I mean-
was
They thought it
passionate.
would be less controversial and they could get work done
Sure.
better.
Well, and that's where at the Alliance meeting, you guys can make that decision. I mean,
The idea I like is having the Alliance do a subcommittee,
sure.
which would be the
I think that's a great idea. And what you're gonna get is you're gonna get those that wanna be there to make a difference. But that's gonna be at y'all's level. So, I mean, we can add that to section 5, that, if we need to, as far as, the day-to-day operations with those agencies, to be discussed. Obviously, the Alliance meeting, you guys will discuss if you wanna do a subcommittee.
To me, the biggest concern now is getting the NCIC part of it.
Yes.
Confirmed, because
Yes.
we were granted a pass the last
Yes.
time we had a compliance inspection, and if it happens again and nothing's in place, we're gonna get our terminals taken
Pulled.
from us. There's no two ways about it. Just so happens the person that did the compliance tends to like us, so they've helped us out this time around.
Sure.
So I don't think it'll happen a second time.
No, I agree. Now, in section 5, we can put something in there as far as operation policies, not personnel, that those agencies would be responsible for, that they were talking about. And then from there, if they want to form that subcommittee, that's on them, because I'm telling you, we do not want to be at that level. That is not where we need to be.
I can tell you, they want that committee, and they're passionate about wanting that committee, and they want
So
it
what would the
identified
language
in this
be on it?
document. If nobody
Or how
has
would that
any
look?
problem with that,
How-
and the
how would that
emergency
look?
management director has no problem, the sheriff has no problem, the 911 director has no problem, these 9 people have no problem, the 2 mayors have no problem, and the 2 police
You're
chiefs.
talking about the Alliance committee having a subcommittee. Obviously, the subcommittee, that's at their level, but as far as this indicating the day-to-day operations minus personnel to be handled at that level.
Well, from a legal standpoint, it doesn't matter. I assume this committee basically has no authority anyway, other than recommendations. And
Exactly.
it doesn't matter how or where it's created. You can't, and you're right, as far as making these appointments, that's up to whether the cities want to participate, and whether those individuals show up, that's more than you can.
What is it, can it say that a committee will be formed from the Alliance? The Alliance will form a committee of,
I don't think we can.
Well, what you could do to simplify it,
To
you could
advise.
authorize an advisory committee appointed by the Alliance strictly for their recommendations.
something like, that's kind of what I was saying. See, that's
But-
good lawyer talk there.
Well, that puts it in one sentence.
Yeah, I understand.
What did you hear at the Alliance meeting,
But
loud
there's-
and clear, on March 23rd from the firemen? They had 1 member. They didn't think that, but for 200.
Oh, no, I understand that. That's
200
what, but
I
if you
understand.
go to that, if you go to the Alliance, the people that come to the Alliance are the fire chiefs. They're gonna have the largest vote. They can put who they want to on that.
Not all of them, because some of these
don't have
fire
to
chiefs
listen.
don't go.
You might-
But they'll need to go.
She could look at
And-
the almanac and
and
rely on that.
Every single entity
That's-
was agreeable to
that's-
that 9
that's
person.
how-
vote.
But now,
Every single.
I was left with the impression that they thought a committee would be okay, and if they form it through the Alliance, the firefighters should have a voice. If they don't have a voice, it's their own fault.
Right.
That's on them.
You could, like he said, what you're asking is that you could mention in there that the advisory board can be appointed as a subcommittee from the Alliance Board. I don't know if I said that twice, but, and that, strictly for recommendations and review.
To review policies and procedures and make recommendations to the director.
Yes.
But as far from a legal standpoint, the director can throw it in the trash.
That's exactly right. And then they have a
Right.
grievance procedure to go
They
to
can
at that
document if they
point,
make recommendations or not.
and it'll
Yes.
either be resolved, it'll get resolved at some point. But they would like something before the
Yes.
grievance procedure to be able to review and have a voice in their policies.
And we tried to attempt that in section 5, but we can be more specific. Do you remember what you just said?
And using.
It's on tape.
Using the formula that he came up with would be sufficient, I think, for that.
Well, it's not
I think
what I
it's-
think, it's what these people think.
Let
But
the
the
Alliance
Alliance
Board
may-
determine that.
Yes.
The Alliance Board may not put those 9 people on an advisory board that want to be on it, though.
But the Alliance Board, and the first thing you said, he told me that, she told me that, and every one of these fire chiefs told me that, and the 2 police chiefs told me that. The Alliance is a broken
Oh,
tool.
okay. I don't know.
Is a
about-
broken tool, period.
And maybe so.
They're loud
I'm
and clear with
I'm
that.
just
Yes,
making
ma'am.
up
It-
the procedural.
We're just saying it's not well attended.
It's not
Right,
well
right,
attended.
right.
Well,
this board would be well.
50 people showed up.
That's at their level.
This, I think this.
I do too. Do you remember what you said, Jeff?
The more the better, really, as far as input goes, and the heads of the departments.
Jeff, do you remember how you worded that?
problem that I heard at those Alliance meetings, you listen to 2 or 3 people talk for 2 hours and get nothing accomplished, and that's why half these people don't come. And that's why law enforcement doesn't attend, or the police chiefs in the cities don't attend.
Okay.
Exactly.
We can't leave it up to
And that's
the
where I'm
board
going
to
with this.
appoint.
No.
It's our job,
No.
in this document.
That whole thing is gonna be live.
Oh, operations would be that.
What happens now? 267 firemen. Sure you do. That's why everybody can live with that 9-person board.
I want it in this document.
They want it in the document.
You don't think, what I'm hearing is they'd like for it to be spelled out in there that this is 3 and 3 and the members, and let the Alliance appoint it, but they'd like to, the membership be set.
Well, I think we're getting into an interlocal agreement because we're basically telling the cities how to appoint, and we can't do
The
that.
cities are telling us by their police chiefs.
For the record, I haven't heard anything from the city mayors.
That's because you haven't gone to talk to them. I have talked individually with
Well-
everybody, these 3 people, the 2 mayors, the 2 police chiefs, and 9 fire chiefs. And I put that in form of a motion that we identify that in this ordinance, the 9-member board, as I discussed earlier. Motion's on the
I'll
floor.
second when it gets to
What
me.
you're saying is that,
Hang on,
You got a motion
he got a motion and a second.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Rick's making a motion for what?
Exactly
To
what
identify the 9
exactly
members.
what I said earlier.
We want them identified in this document. the 9
3 law
members.
enforcement, 3 fire, emergency management director, the ambulance director, or his or her designee, along with the animal control officer, 9-person board.
Now, these don't have to be members of the Alliance Board.
No, but they all are. When they give that roll call, if you'll listen to the roll call, the judge is on there, the commissioners are on there. That's the
All
first
these
invitation
members
I've
are on
ever
the
attended.
alliance.
But they don't attend that.
The question I have is that you've got the city chiefs, do we have the authority to tell them that they need to
You got the authority to authorize the Alliance Board to do this.
do?
That would be an
To
interlocal
set
agreement.
that up. No, to set
Can't do
that up with those members. And if they don't want to be, if they We can't make them, but
No,
you
no,
can.
just forget the alliance. You're wanting to name specific individuals.
Yes,
Not
that's what the
individuals,
motion,
just
Right.
positions.
that's what the motion was.
That's what these people tell me, including the 2 mayors, the 2 police chiefs.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be a Alliance Board committee.
No. That's
My-
not what the motion is.
It's gonna be 2 separate committees.
Here's my thing, there's been nothing officially requested out of my office. Are we getting into the interlocal agreement from past, which is an option on the presentation? I mean, we're, at some point, we all know what they want. It's actually delivering the right instrument to make sure that it's accomplished. And
The interlocal agreement that was in place prior to, and I think I can explain this hopefully in the best light, was to have the same function as when it is gonna be passed over to me. NCIC only was their only function. But when that was done years back, it was pretty much assumed by the current, or by that administration, that that board would take care of all other issues as well, which really they shouldn't have, in my opinion, and it just got to the point of where they took over the day-to-day operations, the HR, all of that. And that's where this is stemming from, because those entities have had that control on it, and that's hard to relinquish. I do think there should be some kind of advisory there, because you do have operational differences that need to be discussed. Again, with the alliance meeting, it's not well attended. I don't know if that should be done through a subcommittee, or if it needs to be named like Commissioner Cock is wanting to put in the ordinance, but I think that's where all of this problem stems from,
Yeah.
is that board was given actually too much control, so to speak.
with and that's where all that, we understand, I understand all that. The attendance prior to, if it's been where agency reps are not attending, that's an individual agency reason why they're not attending. If you put it, all the individuals that utilize 911 are represented there. If you put it to where this is the location where the policies and procedures are going to be dealt with, if they choose not to attend, we can't control that. If they want a voice, there's their voice at the table. If it's a subcommittee, if the alliance wants to have a subcommittee, that's fine. But trying to get that worded in the ordinance, I mean, we can't tell the cities that their chiefs of police will sit on this board. We
You
just,
can't force
we don't
them,
have
that's
that
their
authority.
wishes.
If you get into an interlocal agreement, that's one of the options in the presentation that falls under the funding. Those cities would fund. And I haven't heard from those cities as far as if they want to fund it, nor have I heard if they want to have their chiefs at the table.
Well, I can assure you, I'm not making it up. Got a motion on the floor in a second.
I think the question,
Looking at
Jeff,
language.
still, the language. The motion is that those agencies, 2 of them which are city chiefs of police, being on a 9-member board. That's what the motion is. Can we, as a fiscal court, direct those 2 to be on a board? That's my question.
We're not directing them, we're giving them an opportunity. If the mayor's
If
would
any
like
of
and the
these
chiefs.
organizations or these individuals, or I mean, not entities or individuals, choose not to participate, that's between them and their.
Then call it a voluntary
For
board.
instance, the sheriff, if this fiscal court directs him to be a part of this advisory board, he has to. Or the animal, or the coroner, or, anybody that is under the guise of the fiscal court. But as far as these police chiefs, if the city doesn't appoint anybody.
That is
That's
correct,
gonna
but
be
it
in
gives
the
them the opportunity. That's all they are asking, yes.
And
This would have to say that, I mean, it's advisory, completely advisory.
Sure,
That's all we're
Right.
asking for.
That's all
Right.
on the voice.
Go ahead.
And an advisory board, why would an advisory board meet monthly? I think that's way too often.
They don't, Jeff, I'm just telling you what they say, this is not what Rick
Okay.
Cock wants.
Okay.
That's the people that provide this service, 911 service, this is their lifeline, the safety and protection of the 31,000 citizens in Marshall County. It should be a high priority with all of the people that sit at this table.
When there's discrepancies with the current policy and procedure, that's handled, obviously, at the lower level.
Yeah.
And then it works its way.
Right.
So, I mean, when they meet, all that stuff, we would have to identify.
Well, and I haven't talked to them, but I just thought that monthly sounded way too often for policy recommendations. But,
And they could set their own schedule.
That's their
They do not have anything to meet on.
okay, but.
That's just if they meet in
their
adjourn.
discretion.
At their discretion.
They're just more comfortable, like I say, each of those entities express that.
They want a voice. They deserve a voice.
Okay, one other question. If we're gonna do this, then there's no reason for number 5 in her.
That motion? I don't think so either. That's,
Need to remove that in its entirety, correct?
So she doesn't go to the alliance.
Right. If we're gonna do this.
the alliance is a broken tool. He told me that, It could be a whole lot better. It's not well attended. And if it's not well attended, these fire chiefs, some of them don't attend. Law enforcement, there was not a law enforcement officer there, the one I went to.
Okay, here's a suggestion.
Okay?
We've got a motion and a second. Why don't you table it for right now, move on, and let me work on this and see if we can come back and.
Have no problem with that.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
I have no problem with that.
Don't
and-
like drafting these things.
As long as we come back to it.
Right, it's not an emergency, so, that's,
Let's move on to the bid, used truck for the sheriff's office. You got those bids?
Jesus. Wait just a second. Sheriff gets here. Or I can read the bid.
You
All
can,
right.
you can read it
The
and hand it
advertisement.
to him. He
Yeah.
can look at it.
This was advertised in the Marshall County Tribune Courier, Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. Marshall County Fiscal Court will accept bids for a used truck to be used by the Marshall County Sheriff's Office. The truck should be a half-ton truck that is a 2014 or newer year model. The truck should have fewer than 60,000 miles. The truck should be a dark color and be equipped with a V8 engine greater than 300 cubic inches. The truck should have 4 doors with the front seats being cloth and the rear having vinyl seat for prisoner transport. The truck should have power windows and locks. The truck must be 4x4. The Fiscal Court will accept sealed bids until 4 p.m. on Friday, May 12, 2017, in the Judge Executive's office at 1101 Main Street, Benton, Kentucky, 42025. Please write sealed bid on the outside of the envelope. Bids will be opened and read on Tuesday, May 16, 2017. The Marshall County Fiscal Court reserves the right to reject any and all bids. There are 2. One, McCulley's, received May 12th, 2017, 2014 Ram 1500 bid.
what was the mileage on those vehicles? Not to have over, how many miles?
Over, nothing, it says, the truck should have fewer than 60,000 miles.
You put that in there?
Yeah,
Oh.
I couldn't remember for sure if that's what
Okay,
I said or
okay,
not.
yeah, okay, good deal.
This is for a 2014 Ram 1500 Tradesman Edition. $19,700 with trades. Marshall County Sheriff Department trading in 2008 Chrysler Sebring red, 2004 GMC Yukon white, 2004 Dodge Intrepid rebuilt title, 2007 Dodge Magnum white. So purchase price is $19,700.
How many miles does that vehicle have on it?
58,442.
Next one is from Leon Riley Ford, received May 12th, 246, sealed bid, 2014 F-150.
Got the anti-theft option on it too.
I have enclosed a copy of the original window sticker and copy of the auto check. Your cost would be $27,495. Truck is subject to availability. This is for a 2014 F-150 4x4 Super Crew. And mileage is 59,000. Take those over.
The building interlocal agreement, we discussed last court meeting. We had the county attorney's office make the changes. If you look at section G under budget process and financing, the second sentence there, in accordance with policies it shall establish, it will timely submit the proposed budget to the county and cities for their review and consideration. The proposed budget shall state the amount proposed to be collected from each entity for its participation and shall be prepared and submitted to each participating entity on or before May 15th of each year. That was a change. If you look at section 2, the same budget process and financing, and it's going to be the end of the first sentence, funding for the board's operation of its office and for its providing the services required of it under the agreement shall be provided by the board, by the county, and the cities by taking the total of at least 6 months prior, average the fees collected from each party's jurisdiction, and establish a pro rata amount for each party to pay. So that was added. Basically, that was not in the last interlocal agreement, so we added that so that the cities could see how the budget was being drafted. We're going to present this to the cities so that they can review it. Obviously, they need to see how the county has come up with how the fees are being regulated. Is there any questions on that?
They have not been notified as of now?
They have.
Have been notified, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I emailed,
Friday afternoon?
yes, I
Late
did
Friday.
email them. I believe it was last Friday.
If you look at the last, that's why we're making these changes, because if you look at the last interlocal agreement, the board basically had a timely manner to present. That presentation was done during the budget workshop, or the budget committee workshop. And the specific portion that the cities would pay was on March 15th. And the board, obviously, and even for us, March 15th is stretching it to get budget items identified. So May 15th on or before seemed to be fair to everybody that has to prepare a budget.
I agree.
Any questions on that? We're going to submit that to the cities for their review. And they can
Let me ask you a
respond to it.
question that we all attended the Benton City Council meeting last night, and this was information that I learned from them. These proposed fees and so forth, it is just what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong or got the wrong message from Mayor Dotson, but somebody explained to her that in Benton's case that this $2,153.97 was suggested to be budgeted but not going to be collected. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
That's good. I think that's a good idea to suggest them do that.
All right, we're going to move on to old business. E911 Town Hall meeting update.
I think I submitted all of you via email a summary of our town hall meetings. As you had directed, we did create a presentation. Took us a couple of months at 911 to come up with informational PowerPoint, just included some general information about our organization, statistics on our funding shortfalls and options that you all had outlined for funding going forward. Those 3 options that were included in the presentation were an increase in landline fee, interlocal agreement, the new creation of a different interlocal agreement, and possibly the addition of a parcel fee. So we took those 3 options out. We conducted a series of 11 town hall meetings, and some of those did include governmental meetings such as the Fiscal Court meeting and city council meetings. Did you want me to go through the whole summary of it, Judge? So our first meeting that we held was here with you all at Fiscal Court. We did have the director of Kentucky 911 Services Board down as well. That was well attended. We had some good conversation. Our first meeting out in the community, though, was the alliance meeting with the responders. We had a very good turnout, 40 to 50 people, which is not the usual turnout. But as we mentioned, we had a purpose at that one. So
How many turned out?
Where that could
40 to 50?
40 to 50. And I do see that's what we were talking about. If there were a committee in place that could give them a reason to turn out. During that meeting, they did vote unanimously to support the parcel fee option. There were some questions that arose during that meeting. They had some concerns over who would be operating 911. As we discussed, policy and procedure did come up. At that time, there was some misunderstandings about what the management control portion of NCIC meant, how the sheriff's office would be handling that. So we did inform them about the NCIC portion of that. They wanted to know if the fee would be set high enough to ensure that all of the needed expenses would be covered and that we wouldn't have to go back and address this again in upcoming years. They wanted to know if funds could be used for a new 911 facility, and there were comments made firmly against raising the landline fee. And they also wanted to know how much the fee would be set at, which was a question that we encountered at all of these meetings. And as you know, we kind of rounded that off to around $3 or $4 a month. That's unofficially what we've been discussing. At the Calvert City Council meeting, that was April the 10th, none of these council meetings included a vote by their governing bodies. It was just informational only. But at this meeting, they were curious to know how the fee would be set if the parcel option was the way that the court went. So in other words, they wanted to know what type of research would be done to establish that fee. And as you all had mentioned, you look at the shortfall first, and then you look at your database, and that's how your calculation is made. We don't have a firm database right now on multi-housing units. Our GIS and PVA offices have a good database of your single-family homes, your businesses, but they don't have a good footprint of what those multi-housing units and or any type of tourism population, any revenue that would be generated from that. We don't have that database yet. So that's why we don't have a concrete number on what that fee would be. There were concerns over rental property owners having to renegotiate their contracts, which I thought was a really good concern. So the discussion from that was that if the court did move toward the parcel fee option, that you moved toward it early enough to allow property owners to renegotiate those leases and begin collections maybe the year prior to it actually being due. So they could go ahead and renegotiate those leases with their tenants and start collecting now if it were going to be due next year, for example, so that it's not an undue hardship for them. There were concerns over an interlocal agreement. For those of you that have not seen the presentation, it is available on our county website on the 911's page. It is available on our Facebook page as well. But if you're not familiar with what the interlocal agreement is, it would be a shared cost agreement basically between the cities and the county. And at the Calvert City Council meeting, there was concern over city residents who are also county residents having their tax money paid for, used to pay for 911 out of city funds, and then again out of county funds. They see that as a double tax. Would the fee be enough to replace some of our ailing equipment, such as the county's radio system? That did come up at several of our meetings. It is no news to anyone in here probably that our communication system is probably the biggest detriment that we have in emergency response. It's going to be a very large project. So that is something that several of us are getting together on, just to kind of draft a communications plan to see what that cost would be. And then as we go forward with the funding for 911, I guess we'll see if that communications plan would fit into the scope of funding for 911. There was also discussions about whether or not this would cause an undue hardship on elderly residents who would be asked to pay between $36 and $48 a month. And in looking at the calculations, some of our residents are already paying that and more, because obviously your elderly and your business owners are the ones that have your landlines, and you do pay a fee on each one of your landlines that you have. So at the Hardin City Council meeting on April the 10th, that was also the same night as Calvert City Council, so the sheriff handled that one. I'll let him just make comments on.
Before that,
Yeah.
you said $36 to $48 a month.
I'm sorry, a year.
It was a year.
Yeah, I'll panic people. A year, I apologize. $3 to $4 a month, 36 to 48 a year.
As far as the Hardin City Council, they're basically the same type of questions as Calvert City. They, of course, did not take a vote, but it was favorable toward the parcel fee. They did have questions such as them, because, at this point, we can't answer what the dollar amount's gonna be because we don't have all the information to set that. But they all felt like that was the most fair way to do it, because that encompasses everybody and not put the burden on the elderly and the business owners. They were quite receptive to the presentation, and they felt like that the parcel fee would be the best way to go. Like I said, they didn't take a vote, but they wasn't any opposition to it. There were some good questions asked. The Benton City Council, go ahead and say with that, because I did that meeting as well. There was, some concerns and whatnot there about the renters and things such as that, and that is a good point to give them plenty of time to incorporate that into their rent process. And one of the other things that was brought up by one of the council members of Benton City Council, that at any time, this court could raise that fee whenever they wanted to. Yeah, that's a possibility, but with that being said, at any time, the landline fee could have been raised at any point by this court, and it hasn't been done in over 25 years. So the likelihood of that being raised, I don't see that it's a good probability, and I don't know that that is a valid argument for or against the parcel fee, because I don't think this court would do anything to place any hardship on anybody, because it's, we're all in the same boat together. Let's do it as most efficient as we possibly can. But that was really the only concerns that at the council meeting that we had, as far as any questions on that. The interlocal agreement wasn't an option. Raising the landline fees wasn't an option with them, but there was some questions over the parcel fees. But I think overall it was favorable. That's the direction that they possibly would go, that they would feel comfortable with.
So April the 13th, we went back to Calvert City, where we hosted a town hall meeting. There were only approximately 5 residents that attended. They did have one of the better questions, though, I thought, and they asked if this fee would apply to campers who had sites that were paid for year-round, as well as those who possibly had houseboats year-round. So that would be something to consider if you went with the parcel fee option as a way to generate other revenue from people who obviously have an expectation of those services while they're here visiting.
And the answer to that question, Misty, is we haven't discussed that.
Right. And that would,
And that is a
we
legitimate
explained.
question. A lot of unanswered questions.
What we explained to everyone while we had these questions is that as you all go forward with whatever decision you make, just for example, if it is the parcel fee, you will have probably some sort of a committee that will address all these various issues and how you go forward with it. So unfortunately, we weren't able to answer specifics, but just give general information. So then on April the 19th, we spoke at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon, very well attended. There were probably 60, 65 people there, I'd say. Commissioner Rick attended that one as well. They were curious to know, there was a group that was curious to know why we didn't do the work up front to establish what the fee would be specifically. And again, we explained that the work that would go into that database is probably several months long. And it's my understanding that the court felt like we just wanted to get some public input first before you all allocated any funds or extra resources to any of these three options. And they understood that. They also had questions about how Section 8 housing would be handled, if the fee would be able to be applied, and I think Judge Ed actually answered that at one of the other meetings, that probably, like in any other city that has any type of Section 8 housing, whatever local fees apply would just be outside of and be the responsibility of the managing entity to make sure that those are paid. They were particularly interested in the amount of savings that would be earned from the landline fees being removed if you went with the parcel fee option. Of course, this is a lot of your business leaders in the community, and for a business like WCBL, who's paying almost $500 a year in landline fees, obviously there would be a tremendous savings for some of your small businesses.
I would say we did get one question answered that has been asked for a long time. Does not have anything to do with the funding issue with what we're talking about, but cell phones. We had a Verizon representative there, and we've always wondered about this question, and this kind of helps pertain to this as well. If you have a cell phone that is a Kentucky cell phone, that monies is supposed to come back to Kentucky. But if you use a cell phone that's not issued through the state of Kentucky, that money goes outside the state and goes back to the other state. So anybody that's moved in here from out of state and kept their old cell phone, that money goes back to that state that they came from. It doesn't come to Kentucky.
Or the tourists or the people that come
Exactly.
down for the summer.
Exactly.
Summer.
They still utilize our 911 services because it's there, because the cell phones will hit our towers. But that surcharge that's on that cell phone goes to the state that they're from, and we do not get any revenue off of that. That's a question we haven't had answered in a long time.
Same is true for people who
Move out of here, exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing, yeah.
And to be very transparent, we only receive about $150,000 a year from those wireless fees that are collected. The fee that appears on your wireless bill, once it's redistributed through the state process and it comes back down, only about 150, maybe 160, 170 now with the minimal increase that was passed through legislature last year. So it's certainly not enough to run any type of an operation off of. Additionally, at the chamber meeting, it was suggested that the court consider an interlocal agreement in addition to one of the other options, and they had mentioned specifically the parcel fee to help bring that parcel fee down. But there's a lot of work that goes into interlocal, so we'll just move on. April the 20th, we hosted a town hall meeting at South Marshall. That was at their fire station. It was pretty well attended. We had 15 to 20 people. Several in this group, it's notable that they were either responders or family members of emergency responders in the community. So this was a group that was very much in favor of making sure that their community had all the resources possible. And so they were in favor of the parcel fee as well as adequate facility and adequate services for their responders. Benton Town Hall meeting was held on April the 27th. It was a small crowd. We only had about 5. There were some stated concerns over the current issue of funding 911 through landline fees. They said it's just not a fair process right now. There's so few people that actually have landlines. And again, the ones that have them are elderly and businesses, that they wanted to see a fair system put in place. They felt the best way to do that was the parcel fee. We did have one of our Benton City Councilmen here, and again, he stated his concern over the fact that the court could possibly raise the fee without any type of feedback, I guess, if you will, from the community. And I guess what I would say to that is it's taken us a year. This court has been so diligent in this process. It's taken a year just to get permission to go out and even have these town hall meetings, because that's how much thought they've put into it. So again, I would say to anyone that's concerned about this court or any other governmental agency around here raising a fee without putting any thought into it, I just don't see that happening. It's certainly not been the case before. We had a Rotary Club on May the 1st. There was approximately 30 people in attendance. All were in favor of the parcel fee during that meeting. They did ask questions about outsourcing. So this did come up, although it wasn't one of the options that we presented. Outsourcing was discussed. Without saying too much, the court, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you all wanted to look at local options first. And then if down the road you needed to look at outsourcing, you would consider that. But for now, it was off the table for the reasons of wanting to look for a local solution. They wanted to know if it was possible to charge on a per-call basis for 911 calls. And my thought would be is if you assess a charge, I don't even know that you could do it, but if you were to assess a charge on anyone that called 911, they'll just figure out your administrative lines, and those are the ones they're going to use, and then we're not going to get GPS location on them. So I didn't really think that was an option, but it was mentioned, and I wanted to pass it along to you. They felt like the fee that we had discussed, $3 to $4 a month, would be fair, and they did mention asking that if this was the direction the court went with the parcel fee, that a COLA be built in to prevent this type of a future funding shortfall. On May the 4th, we wrapped everything up with a town hall meeting in Hardin. Only a handful of residents attended. They were very curious about being able to tap into the tourism population, though, to make sure that they also paid their fair share while they're here. And transparency, that came up. They wanted to know that if this fee is passed, what will the oversight be, and how can the community be assured that all of the funding that is collected is going to 911? And so we explained the difference in a fee and a tax, and a fee is specifically to recoup the cost of providing a service. It has to go back to 911. And that was pretty much everything else from that one was kind of a duplicate of things that we had discussed before. But did y'all have any questions? I was surprised. I really expected some rocks to be thrown at me from time to time, but the community was very supportive of our service, and I was proud to see that.
I think I've said it before, if you get out and you educate the citizens and get them to understand what actually is at stake and what their part is, it's received, or should be received well. I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but I think that's the good stewardship for us as elected officials, is to do our best to inform the citizens in this community what actions are necessary.
And I guess, because we're funding it now, I guess, out of the general fund, plus our landlines, basically, we get a little bit from E911. I've had a little bit of pushback, I guess more than a little on it, and tried to explain, and I do believe that it's probably a more fair way of funding 911. I wondered, from a property owner standpoint, we talk about that they're already paying this anyway, and I mean, that's kind of the way it's been presented. Has there been any thought or consideration of possibly reducing our tax rate in order to get that funding, $300,000 back to the property owners? They'd reduce that and the landlines and then fund it with 911. I think it would probably make it a lot more palatable and a good explanation for people if we'd at least think about that, consider it kind of revenue neutral.
No, when I heard the judge executive from Campbell County speak, that was their goal, was to have a revenue neutral. By taking I think they had 44,000 landlines, and over a period of time, it was reduced to 20-something. So it was a big hit to their revenue. Their goal was to get back up to where the numbers were at with the 44,000 landlines that they had. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. I don't know.
It's going to be a while before we have to make any decisions, but I thought it could be something we could consider.
I think that was, I heard him speak 2016. Since then, I think Dale was here, said that they were proposing a $2. If I heard him correct, they were proposing an increase. So, I mean.
For their communications program.
So
to go from 45 to 85.
The intent may have been a net revenue neutral, but, I mean, obviously the service for 911, and that's why we had this presentation put together, the funding issue. I mean, we can't escape its grasp. If we're going to have a 911 service in this county, we're going to have to fund it.
Absolutely.
Plus, you've got to plan ahead for the next gen. That is definitely coming, and it's going to do wonderful things when it does get here. And that's going to be expensive. And you know, it's not an option.
But spreading that out, I mean, there's no doubt, we need to get all that encompassed into this. If we decide to go, I know we just kind of seem to like default to the fee, and I don't know if there's any other better options, but it seems like the fairest way to collect the funding that you need for 911. And there's no doubt but what 911 just a part of our society now. There's no getting away from it.
I don't know, to me, it looks like it's the same difference, the fee, as opposed to the landlines, when the landlines were up over 12,000. You know, it's fell back now, and it's not catching everybody that utilizes that services before it did, whereas this parcel fee will. And the biggest concern, again, was people understanding that it's gonna be on occupancy. It's not gonna be, if you've got a 150-acre farm with a barn with, 100 head of cattle on it, that's not gonna be on.
Oh, yeah, I've explained that to them.
Of all the texts I've received 2 no's on the fee. They were very adamant no, but I've received dozens of yes.
And again, you're not gonna get 100%.
Right.
Regardless of
Right.
what you do.
We'll have to make a decision at some point.
The one person stated, "I voted for you 3 commissioners. I hope I can again."
They have an option they proposed?
No, he didn't.
No, just no.
No fee.
Seldom-
That was the
seldom.
option, no fee.
Leave it like it is most of the time. When I get pushback, that's what they did. And, you try to explain that's probably, that's certainly, you could wait till you absorb a huge part of your general fund, but it's just really not an option.
I
to
don't
leave it.
think
Your
they-
2 no's one of them wasn't a guy that was at the town hall meeting inebriated, was it?
No, it wasn't him. I got the same message, it wasn't him.
No.
But Commissioner, I don't think what they understand, the ones that are saying leave it like it is, at some point in time, that subsidy is gonna have to increase 2-fold.
Oh, I understand.
And the county can't do that. There's just no way that they can. That's Tony's bailiwick there.
Looking at the participation, some town hall meetings, there were a lot of people that showed up. Others, there weren't. It was disappointing, but we also anticipated that. We've also put the presentation on the webpage. We've put it on social media so that those that cannot make it can review it. I know when I went to the Calvert's town hall meeting, I left the office, drove down the interstate, and all the soccer games that were going on at the park, families were out. Got the Calvert, the recreational soccer, all the families that were there. I mean, I understand that there's not going to be a huge turnout at these town hall meetings, but it is important to try to reach to the citizens as much as possible so that we can get them that information so that they can view it for themselves. And when you talk to certain ones, you can tell the ones that haven't watched the presentation and the ones who have watched the presentation, the ones that understand it. And that's a challenge in itself to educate them, but I think our responsibility is to get it out to them as much as possible. So I know we've talked about trying to find some other platforms that we can get this presentation out to citizens so that they can see it. Obviously, one of the questions that was asked to me, people thought that this decision was going to be made within this fiscal year, and I told them this is not a decision that happens overnight. It takes time. There's multiple parties involved, whichever option is chosen, and there has to be a lot of communication. But the most important thing for this fiscal court is to get the feedback from the taxpayers.
To kind of go along with my suggestion would be whenever the court does make this decision, that it goes, the fee is assessed on the following year's tax bill, if that's the option that the court chooses to do. From our discussion, giving those landlords time to incorporate that.
Sure.
And, I don't think it would be whenever y'all make the decision, I don't think it would be put in place that year. It needs to be at least the next billing cycle, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's still, there's a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
that we still have to get information on. All right, appreciate the summary. One of the things, like I said, we're gonna do is try to get that presentation out on other platforms the best we can so that people get informed. New business, the interagency agreements.
Changes have been made, so we can do.
Okay.
Wrap up old business here.
All right.
This is not in our packet, the changes.
No, I just made them.
Just made.
So we took out number 5, which is requiring the director to attend the alliance meetings. So that's not in there anymore in its entirety. And then, okay, B1 and 2, I see now. Number 2 here is the new provision. Advisory board consisting of the individuals named below shall meet as necessary with the Marsh County 911 director to advise on policies and procedures of Marsh County 911 not involving personnel or criminal justice information system link NCIC. Marsh County 911 director may call for a meeting, or 3 or more members of the advisory board may call for a meeting. Meetings shall be subject to Kentucky open meetings and open records requirements. As this is an advisory board only, no quorum requirements are necessary to hold a meeting, and no formal records of meetings shall be required. Members of the advisory board are as follows: Sheriff or his designee, Chief of Police Calvert or his designee, Chief of Police Benton, his or her designee. 3 members is chosen by the chiefs of the fire departments, Marsh County Emergency Management Director or his or her designee, Marsh County EMS Director or his or her designee, Marsh County Animal Control Director or his or her designee.
Very good.
What's the rotation on that, Jason? How often will they need to read it?
Whenever it's a broken tool and doesn't
Whenever
work.
they want to. Whenever they want to.
There was a motion and a second, the change to the ordinance. Is there any discussion on the changes to the ordinance?
Just for the, as procedural standpoint, let's see, Doc, you made the motion first, right?
Yes, sir.
If you could amend your motion, or, yeah, amend your motion to include the changes as we just read.
Where you deleted, yes, number 2, yes.
Amend my motion to do what now?
Amend, your motion would be amended to approve with these changes, to approve the ordinance as read with these changes.
Everything else remaining the same, besides this board being identified in this ordinance. Yes, I will do that.
I'm still second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now for the second reading of this ordinance, we need a motion to approve the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
We'll get a copy of this next meeting before we vote on it, right?
Get a
So
copy of
try
it
and copy
today.
right now, can't you? Or
This is,
Print it out.
do what?
Said he's just got to print it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. Hard
Those are
copy.
Good.
Yeah.
Things I need to do.
We'll move on with the new business interagency agreements. We had, which one do I have here in this? Is this the 1% or 0%? Let me look here. 1%. We presented to the refuse department a interlocal agreement for for 1% or 0%, and it looks like they chose 1%. Interlocal agreement is the same as we had last year, that the auditors had told us that this is how we should have our agreements set up. So if we want to accept that from the refuse, we need a motion.
We're accepting what from the refuse?
Your interlocal agreement.
They got a signed interlocal agreement.
Oh, yeah.
Motion to accept the interlocal agreement from the refuse department.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The clerk's interlocal or interagency agreement, that said interlocal agreement, should be yeah.
Is there any reason Tim's signature's not on there where Marvin's is and refuse?
I think the refuse had their meeting last week. They signed, I guess the board voted on it. But this is, we wanted to present the body of the agreement. The fiscal court has to agree to the body of this, and then each agency would agree at their board level or individual level, in that case for Tim.
Let me ask a question. I noticed on the Tim's, from the clerk's office, the numbers are the same as last year. Emily, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
What about the refuse?
No, they had a 1% increase.
Okay, the refuse had a 1% increase.
Yeah, the
and
board was offered a one, they had two agreements that they could have chose from. One reflected 0% increase, one reflected 1% increase. They approved the one with the 1% increase.
Okay, in the clerk's office, no increase.
Clerk's office, no increase, and the Tourist Commission, no increase.
So the fiscal court, with the interagency agreement with Tim's office and the tourism office, we need a motion to accept the,
Motion to accept the interagency agreement with the clerk's office.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The interagency agreement with the tourism department or visitors bureau.
Motion to accept the interagency agreement with the tourism bureau.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Items that we already had on the books and just satisfying the auditors.
Yeah, the only one that really changed was the refuse.
Right.
But yeah. We'll go to new business sheriff's 2016 settlements.
Is the 2016 franchise tax settlement. In order of approving the settlement, all monies that were collected were distributed and zeroed out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The second one is gonna be the 2016 unmanned rental tax settlement. Same thing with that one, everything was collected, distributed out, and zeroed out on that. Motion on that one.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and the order approving 2016 supplemental tax settlement. Again, everything was collected, was distributed out, and zeroed out on that as well. Motion on that as well.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. The last, the 2016 property tax settlement, we collected over $24 million, distributed it all out, and all but $1.09, so I consider that pretty efficient, in my opinion. Out of 23,000 tax bills, we only turned over 714 to the county clerk for delinquent collections, so that's a 98% collection rate.
Is that about the norm?
That's higher than normal.
Oh, I mean, for us, I know we're higher than normal.
98%
Good.
average is 92, so we're well above that.
Got honest people, Marshall County.
Need a motion on that?
Motion to approve.
There's a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We get Tim to sign those as well.
Under new business, speed limit on Steeplechase Lane and Churchill Lane.
We have had a recommendation from citizens for a speed limit of 25 miles an hour on Steeplechase and Churchill Lane. Sheriff, are you familiar with that?
Both of them,
And have you found through your experience that the 55 mile an hour speed limit is extremely too fast?
Way too fast.
And you would recommend the 25 mile an hour
I think
speed?
25 would be sufficient.
All right. Right. This would be Commonwealth Kentucky County Marshal Speed Limit Ordinance Number 2017-04. Be it ordained by the Fiscal Court of Marshall County, Commonwealth Kentucky, in accordance with the provisions set forth in KRS 189.3905A, and based upon the request of affected citizens and after review by the Marshall County Road Superintendent, the Marshall County Fiscal Court does hereby set the speed limit as 25 miles per hour for Steeplechase Lane and Churchill Lane located in Marshall County, Kentucky. And Madam, you also reviewed this matter?
Yes.
You make the same recommendation?
I do.
All right, then that would be subject for today's first reading.
We'll move on with new business for Treasurer's Report.
As of April 30th, 2017, our general fund had a book balance of $1,614,666.16. Road fund, $1,154,857.90. Jail fund, $95,731.46. Grant fund, 0. 911 fund, $61,075.72. Occupational tax administrator, $4,818,219.29. Veterans van fund, $3,407.25. ABC fund, $90,861.63. And the building inspection fund, $27,390.22 for a total report of funds of $7,866,209.63.
To approve the treasurer's report subject to audit.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to appropriations transfer.
The appropriation transfer report request in front of you balances out to 0 as it should. All are either due to a departmental transfer or a rounding transfer. Rounding would be due to payroll. The very bottom one, the 911, we're suggesting to pulling $4,000 from salaries to put towards the communication expenses. I will be doing a budget amendment in the coming fiscal court meeting in June, so it will be in this fiscal year, and those appropriations will be put back in the amendment. This is just to keep them out of the red temporarily.
Motion to approve the budget appropriation transfers.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approve payment of the bills.
Motion to pay the bills, Judge.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I have one matter I need to bring up. I mentioned earlier that I'd contacted Scott Bergdold about the presentation on sexually oriented businesses. He can be here for our meeting on June 20th to make that presentation. And I would ask that we schedule that for that time. physically.
If I remember, there's a cost.
Yes, I'll get that. If you go ahead and set it, I'll get he'll send me the packet with the fees and everything. And obviously, if you don't want to, we have a meeting in the meantime, if you do not want to go that route.
Sure.
A motion to move forward with the June 20 meeting with Scott Burdo.
That's from what I remember, a fairly lengthy presentation, right?
Yeah, well, it's about 30, 45 minutes.
We can put it at the end of the fiscal court. So there was
And he may want to,
Yeah,
okay,
I'll work that out with you.
there's a motion and a second.
And we'll get a cost before the next meeting.
Yes.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Brad, do you want to give an update on the mosquito spraying?
Yeah, yesterday, there was a few guys that stopped by from the Department of Agriculture. They are trying to mitigate what they anticipate to be a high population of mosquitoes this year, after the waters go down a little bit. So next week, they'll be in Marshall County, identifying spots that are going to be high population of mosquitoes and applying what they call a fog application on the ground before they hatch. So if you see those guys, that's what they're doing, and probably we'll get a few phone calls from citizens asking what they're doing and what they're applying.
Have you got the areas that they're gonna do?
I don't.
Are they gonna send it to you?
I can ask for it. I've got their cards downstairs.
Forward that on
Yeah,
to us. That'd
sure.
be a big help.
I know he's gonna get in touch with Michael Johnson at the refuge, because I know that's gonna be a high population spot through the refuge. But I can get as much information, but they didn't supply me with any what it is they're putting down or anything. So I'll try to get some more information. That way, when people come up and ask you, you can tell them.
In the past, they've had us, I think they've required that like a homeowner that wanted to spray around their house to contact them. We were going through us before sometime, but I think they want them to contact them directly and request that they come to their home. I've got a number and a name and a number here if anybody wants to, if you want to put it included here and let people know. It's David Wayne with the Department of Ag.
That was one of the gentlemen I met with.
His number's 502-782-9240. And they said if they would contact them and give them an address as they can, they would come and spray even around individual homes.
Julie Connor gave us that information last year, and I gave her a list of 7 homeowners, and they did come in. It's very effective.
I may be wrong, but it seems like I remember that they needed to call them if you didn't want it sprayed around there, like beekeepers and
Now they
things
do,
like that.
that's also part of it too. They don't do, used to, they sprayed wholesale with the airplane. They don't do that anymore. They'll come fog specific sites.
That's what they told me, and they said what they're gonna try to get them before they hatch on the ground so they wouldn't have to be spraying. But if that doesn't work and they continue to be a problem, they'll go with trucks and spray along the roadways.
Right, that's also part of that phone number. Yes, you're right. But if you want your backyard sprayed, that's my understanding that they'll put you on the list and try to get to you if you want to.
But you won't have any idea when they come, most of it's at night.
That's right.
Where the pets are in and people are in, and children are in.
All right, we'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hey, Kevin, don't forget permission on that building for advertisement
Oh, yeah.
or add-on.
The insurance, the damage that was done at the road department, the bids, put the bid advertisement out, but we wanted to ask for permission to put the bid advertisement out.
So move.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Wendy, what about the one where the post had a flat roof to a pitch roof?
Yeah,
Is that safe?
Is it safe? Well, probably not.
You're gonna live with it?
No, it's gonna have to be torn down because it can't be, I talked to Tech, at first he thought that they could put it back, you know, and salvage a lot of the material, but then after he's looked at it and looked at going back to code like the county would have to, he's not so sure on
Just
that now.
one step at a time.
Yeah, and so he's supposed to be getting me prices on the pole barn type buildings, but this would just be to advertise to add on to our existing building, like where the office and shop is now, to take it on out and, put the tar room on that building and a tar changing stall, so they don't have to roll those big tars all the way across the parking lot to get to the shop, so. Just be more handy.
All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.